What would you do if your husband ended your marriage with a cruel text, then learned you were 10 steps ahead? Evelyn had built a life, a home, and a successful boutique, only to receive a heartless message from Kevin, her husband of 12 years. I'm leaving you for my 20-year-old girlfriend. I emptied our joint account, haha. But while he reveled in his escape to Miami, Evelyn smiled. He thought he had won. He had no idea she had already outmaneuvered him. By the time he realized the house, the business, and the real money were all hers, it was too late. Watch as Kevin's fantasy crumbles, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories. The text came in while I was helping customers at my boutique. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. Haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I helped Mrs. Eleanor pick out a scarf. The only sign that my husband of 12 years had just detonated our marriage via text was the slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Eleanor left, her purchase wrapped in our signature silver paper, before typing my response. Good luck! My name is Evelyn, and at 38, I just received the most callous goodbye in history. But while Kevin was probably gloating over his grand exit, imagining me crumbling in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly locking up my boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The sudden late nights at work that never matched his deposits, the new passwords on his phone, the way he had started obsessively going to the gym, buying expensive clothes, clinging desperately to his fading youth. 3 months ago, I found a receipt for dinner for 2 at a high-end restaurant on a night he had claimed to be working late. That same evening, I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. A week later, when he casually suggested we combine our accounts to simplify things, I had smiled and agreed while discreetly moving my personal savings to the new account. The joint account he had just emptied? It held just enough to keep up appearances, about 2 months' worth of routine deposits. The rest? Safely tucked away, along with meticulously documented records of every suspicious transaction he had made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Brittany and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Brittany, the new receptionist at his office. I had met her at the company Christmas party, watched her laugh too hard at Kevin's jokes, seen the way she lingered when she touched his arm. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to believe she was special. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I had consulted 2 months ago when I found the hotel charges on our credit card statement. It's time, I said simply. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Miami? No rush. Let him think he's won. Another text from Kevin. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The boutique I had built from nothing. The business that earned more than his middle management job. The one whose profits I had carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, picturing the certified letters that would be waiting for him in Miami. Let him enjoy his victory lap while he could. That evening, I sat in my house, the one I had inherited from my grandmother, the one I had wisely kept in my name despite Kevin's repeated suggestions to add him to the deed. Another lucky instinct that had paid off. While gathering the paperwork my lawyer needed, I stumbled upon our wedding album. Kevin looked so different then, before his midlife crisis had turned him into a walking cliché. These days, he stuffed himself into shirts too tight for his softening middle, tried too hard to fit in with the 20-somethings at his office, used slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a 45-year-old man. Let him chase his fantasy. Let him believe he had outsmarted me. By the time reality caught up with him, I'd be long gone happier, wealthier, and completely free. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for months. Brittany understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence folder. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admission of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. BTW, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. Mrs. Harrison speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Certainly, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Miami booked today. Hotel charges at the Royal Palm, and I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. Kevin and Brittany would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated, their hotel reservation canceled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego grown so large that he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. My half of my business? That I'd built myself, funded myself, for myself, while he complained about my long hours and called it my hobby? I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, Kevin would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Kevin. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me! I silenced my phone and headed to my boutique. Friday was always our busiest day, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Evelyn, dear, Kevin told us everything about how controlling you've been, how you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while I arranged a window display. Did he mention emptying our joint account and charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then, well, he said you left him no choice, that you'd been cold and distant. Carol, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money, or maybe the one where he mocked my age? Another pause. He did seem a bit cruel. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Carol. I've always liked you, but I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Kevin's family during the proceedings. Proceedings already? Goodbye, Carol. By late afternoon, Kevin's sister Ashley was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Kevin and Brittany were stuck at a budget motel near the airport, their Miami dreams temporarily derailed. He tried using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months. Another red flag I'd noticed. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is set for Monday. Given his admission to draining the joint account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but he'll get the papers at his new motel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media is proving to be excellent evidence. She's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation. A year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, and text messages that proved premeditation. Kevin had been so focused on his grand escape that it never occurred to him I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed. Another text from him. You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded it to my lawyer without a second thought, adding it to the ever-growing file of Kevin's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. Monday arrived, and the emergency hearing was everything I could have hoped for. Kevin strolled in wearing his new young wardrobe designer jeans too tight for his age, a blazer that practically screamed midlife crisis. Outside, Brittany waited, her youth uncomfortably apparent under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our case methodically. Kevin's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, His documented history of hidden expenses, each piece laid out carefully, a damning collection of evidence built over months of quiet observation. "Your Honor," Kevin's hastily hired lawyer began, "my client admits to some rash decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating." "Calculating?" My lawyer didn't miss a beat. "You mean prudent?" My client protected her separate assets and maintained meticulous records of her husband's suspicious financial behavior. "That's not vindictive, that's smart business." The judge reviewed my documentation, the separate property deed to the house, the boutique's corporate papers firmly in my name, only the detailed financial records proving strict separation between personal and business finances, the very thing Kevin had always dismissed as unnecessary. "Mr. Harrison," the judge addressed him directly, "you admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this?" Kevin shifted uncomfortably. "I was just trying to make a clean break." "By committing financial fraud?" The judge arched an eyebrow. "And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation clearly shows is separate from marital assets?" Kevin's lawyer made one last attempt. "The business grew during their marriage. My client is entitled to a share of the profits." "The business was established before the marriage," my lawyer countered smoothly. "And Mrs. Harrison maintained strict financial separation throughout. We have documentation tracking every investment and every dollar earned." I watched as the reality of his situation settled in. Kevin had thought this would be easy, empty our accounts, run off with his girlfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He had always mocked my meticulous bookkeeping, dismissed my insistence on keeping finances separate as paranoia. Now, he finally understood, and it was too late. "The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct," the judge announced. "All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. "But that money's gone," Kevin protested. "We spent it on—" "Then I suggest you find a way to replace it," the judge cut him off. "And Mr. Harrison, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours." Hui. Outside the courthouse, I heard Brittany asking Kevin about their Miami plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he'd never understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Kevin. He tried claiming the boutique had been his idea. He remembered investing money in its early days. He even suggested he'd been my business partner all along, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. "He's getting desperate," my lawyer observed. "His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now. Apparently, living on a receptionist salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined." As Kevin's family started reaching out, their tone Kevinidly different from their initial accusations. "We had no idea," his sister Ashley admitted. "He told us you'd been cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew." His mother called again, this time in tears. "The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway." I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The boutique thrived, ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation. Women started coming in specifically to show support, often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. "My ex tried something similar," one customer confided while buying a designer handbag. "Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them." My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Kevin, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support." I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Brittany was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during secret hotel meetings felt different in the harsh light of reality. She posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes. Yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, she removed her relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for Kevin. Almost. But then I remembered his ha-ha after telling me he'd emptied our account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from Kevin's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Brittany was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a coworker her own age, according to office gossip. Kevin had showed up in his old clothes, the designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. Your Honor, Kevin's lawyer attempted one last time. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support. Moral support? My lawyer interrupted. Like these text messages belittling Mrs. Harrison's business as a little shop? Or these social media posts calling it her hobby? The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. Kevin got his personal possessions and his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. You've destroyed me, he hissed as we left the courthouse. I'll have to move back in with my parents. No, Kevin, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too. His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house, his new home at 45. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom while I continued running my successful business. Did you plan this all along? He accused. You knew this would happen. No, I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records. His mother stepped between us. That's enough, Kevin. You've embarrassed yourself enough already. As they walked away, I heard her berating him. Honestly, what were you thinking? A 20-year-old? Emptying bank accounts? Sending those horrible texts? I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. Kevin had thought that cruel text was the final word in our story. He believed he was the one closing the book. Instead, all he had done was set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed not with desperate messages from him this time, but with notifications from my boutique's website. New orders, new customers. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he had imagined. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Kevin struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he had mocked was thriving. I had hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining national attention. News of Kevin's downfall trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He had tried dating apps, but women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man still living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his past through office gossip, kept their distance. Brittany had apparently warned her friends about him, even sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she left. His career had taken a hit, too. The company's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he had been expecting? It went to someone else, someone without a history of inappropriate workplace relationships. He actually tried to claim age discrimination, Ashley told me one afternoon, appearing unexpectedly at my boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. HR just added that complaint to his file. I hadn't expected to see Kevin's sister in my store, but her presence said everything about how thoroughly he had alienated his own family. I know we didn't support you at first, she admitted, running her fingers over a silk scarf. He played the victim so well, but watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. My lawyer kept me updated on Kevin's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Every petition was denied, every claim of unfair distribution dismissed with the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke, my lawyer told me one day, barely containing her laughter. The judge asked if haha made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought validation in ways I hadn't expected. Local business magazines reached out not to profile me as a scorned wife, but as a savvy businesswoman who had protected her future. Young entrepreneurs sought my advice on keeping business and personal finances separate. Kevin had spent years trying to undermine me, belittle my ambitions, make me doubt my worth. But in the end, he had only proven that I was capable of thriving without him. The best protection is preparation, I told one young woman who reminded me of Brittany. And always trust your instincts. Kevin's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He'd gotten involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed during one call. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions, but he's still blaming everyone else. You, Brittany, his company, the judge. I listened politely but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a third boutique location and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only reminder of Kevin's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. His final text before I blocked his number. "Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Below it sat my latest business award, proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my third boutique location. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful businesswoman expanding her brand. Kevin's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Brittany unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse like a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support his dreams. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough." I continued arranging a display of designer sunglasses. "Those weren't his dreams, Brittany. They were escapes. There's a difference." "I know that now." She paused, then added, "He tried to move in when you froze the accounts, thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of him complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes." I actually laughed at that. "Let me guess. He had big plans but no way to fund them?" "Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off, once he got that promotion, once his cryptocurrency definitely increased in value." She shook her head. "I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real." After she left, my assistant manager whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I replied. "That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did." Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a young couple examining our designer handbags. "Let's talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line." The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. Kevin's mother called one last time, not to discuss Kevin, but to thank me. "You taught our family an important lesson," she said, "about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty. Kevin's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems, but we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them." I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a fourth location. Kevin had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Kevin filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled. picturing him sulking in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been decided the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. 2 years after Kevin's cruel text, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had transformed from a cautionary tale into an inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. My husband says I'm being paranoid, that marriage means sharing everything. I met her gaze and replied smoothly. My ex-husband said the same thing right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. The boutique chain Kevin had mocked had grown into 5 thriving locations, employing over 30 people and earning national recognition. Meanwhile, through mutual friends, I heard Kevin had finally moved out of his parents' house into a cramped apartment above a garage. He had been forced to take a lower-paying job after his old company restructured him out. His dating profile still read young at heart, though the picture was clearly outdated. Ironically, Brittany had become a regular at my original boutique. She had earned her business degree and launched her own social media consulting company. One day, she pulled me aside and said, "You inspired me, showing how a woman can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises." That text Kevin had sent the one meant to break me? I kept it framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I had come. Beneath it, a sign hung on the wall. Success is the best revenge. On the 5-year anniversary of my original boutique, I stood in front of a crowd of employees and loyal customers, celebrating what had once been dismissed as just a little shop. Now, it was the flagship of a growing empire. Kevin's mother was there. I hadn't invited her, but she waited until the crowd thinned before approaching me. "I saw Kevin yesterday," she said, smoothing the fabric of the designer dress she'd bought from my store. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't understand that he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that message he had sent, his casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without him. He had expected me to beg, to break, to prove him right. Instead, I had built something stronger than before. Each new boutique location was a testament to what women could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure men. A young saleswoman I had recently hired, another Brittany, coincidentally walked up with a question about the new inventory system. As I explained it, I caught my reflection in the store window, and I saw what Kevin had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. His text had been meant as an ending. Instead, it had been a beginning not just for me, but for every woman who heard my story and realized she deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis. Because for those women, revenge was never the point. The future was. What do you do when the man who underestimated you the most learns too late that you were never the fool he took you for? Evelyn didn't fall apart when Kevin sent that cruel text. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She had already seen the betrayal coming and had prepared for it. While he had been busy chasing his fantasy, she had been securing her future. He thought he was making a clean getaway, but in reality, he was walking straight into the mess he created. Every condescending word he sent, every smug assumption that she would crumble, only fueled her resolve. The frozen assets, the canceled credit cards, the emergency hearing, each one was a consequence of Kevin's own arrogance. He had always dismissed her business as a little shop, mocked her financial independence, and belittled her success. But in the end, that shop thrived while he floundered, reduced to a man grasping at a youth that had long since slipped away. Now Evelyn is not just free. She's thriving. Her business is expanding, her success undeniable, and the life she rebuilt is better than anything Kevin could have imagined. And Kevin? He's stuck in his own cautionary tale, living proof of what happens when you underestimate a woman with foresight. So here's the real question. Do you think Evelyn's preparation was her greatest strength, or should she have taken an even harder approach? Have you ever outsmarted someone who thought they had the upper hand? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.
The scent of lavender and lemon polish hung in the air as I scrubbed the kitchen counter, my mind drifting to happier times. Times when Alice's laughter filled this very room, her pigtails bouncing as she chased her father around land. Now, at 65, I found myself once again preparing to comfort my daughter, though the circumstances were far from childish games. The phone rang, startling me from my reverie. Alice's name flashed on the screen. "Mom?" Her voice trembled. "I need you." My heart clenched. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Can you come over? I don't know what to do." Within the hour, I was at Alice's doorstep, a plate of her favorite oatmeal raisin cookies in hand. She opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Oh, honey," I said, pulling her into a hug. "What happened?" Alice led me to the living room, sinking onto the plush sofa. I set the cookies on the coffee table and sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. "I got this in the mail today," she said, handing me an envelope. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, my eyes widening as I read the typed message. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Ask him about Rachel and the kids in Oakville." "What does this mean?" I asked, though a sinking feeling in my stomach told me I already knew. Alice shook her head, tears welling up. "I don't know. Sam's on a business trip. He's not answering his phone." I squeezed her hand. "Have you tried calling his office? They said he took a personal day." She let out a bitter laugh. "A personal day in Oakville, apparently." My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Sam had always seemed like such a devoted husband. Charming, attentive, the perfect match for my ambitious Alice. But now, maybe it's just a misunderstanding, I offered, though the words felt hollow even to me. Alice stood abruptly, pacing the room. "A misunderstanding? Mom, he's been lying to me. There's another family out there somewhere." "We don't know that for sure," I said, trying to calm her. "Let's not jump to conclusions." She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "Why are you defending him?" "I'm not," I said quickly. "I just think we need more information before we do anything rash." Alice deflated, collapsing back onto the sofa. "You're right. I'm sorry. I can't believe this is happening." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, remembering how small she used to feel in my embrace. Now she was a successful businesswoman, strong and independent. But in this moment, she was my little girl again, needing her mother's comfort. "We'll figure this out," I promised. "Together." Just then, the front door opened. Sam's voice called out, "Alice, I'm home early." Alice stiffened beside me, her eyes meeting mine in panic. I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze as Sam entered the living room, his smile faltering as he took in the scene. "What's going on?" he asked, his gaze darting between us. Alice stood, her voice steady as she held out the letter. "Care to explain this?" Sam's face paled as he read the note. He looked up, his expression a mix of shock and... was that guilt? "Alice, I can explain," he began, but Alice cut him off. "Save it. I want the truth, Sam. All of it. Who's Rachel? And what kids in Oakville?" As Sam fumbled for words, I watched my daughter's world crumbling around her, and in that moment, I knew our lives would never be the same. Sam's face contorted into a mixture of shock and indignation as he read the letter. "Alice, honey, this is ridiculous. It's got to be some kind of sick joke." I watched my daughter's eyes narrow, her jaw clenching. "A joke? Then explain why you took a personal day in Oakville when you were supposed to be on a business trip." Sam's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. I needed some time to think. Work's been stressful lately." "In Oakville?" Alice pressed, her voice rising. "With Rachel and the kids?" I placed a steadying hand on Alice's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through her body. Sam's gaze darted between us, a cornered animal searching for escape. "There's no Rachel," he insisted, running a hand through his hair. "No kids. Alice, you know me. Would I ever do something like that to you?" The room fell silent, the weight of his question hanging in the air. I found myself searching Sam's face, the man I'd welcomed into our family, trying to reconcile the charming son-in-law with this nervous, evasive stranger before us. Alice's voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke. "I thought I knew you, Sam. Now I'm not so sure." Sam stepped forward, reaching for her hand. But Alice recoiled. "Baby, please, this is crazy. Someone's trying to mess with us, that's all." I couldn't stay silent any longer. "If that's true, Sam, then you won't mind proving it." Let Alice see your phone, your email, your credit card statements. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing his features before he masked it with indignation. Lola, with all due respect, this is between me and my wife. Don't you dare, Alice snapped. My mother has every right to be here. At least, I know I can trust her. The words hung in the air like a slap. Sam's shoulders sagged, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Fine, he said, fishing his phone from his pocket. Here, look through it. You'll see there's nothing to find. Alice took the device, her fingers flying over the screen. I watched her face, seeing the hope and doubt warring in her eyes. After a few minutes, she looked up, her expression unreadable. There are no texts or calls to or from anyone named Rachel, she admitted. But there are a lot of calls to a number with no name. And your email password has been changed recently. Sam threw his hands up. The unnamed number is a client, Alice, and I change my passwords regularly for security. You know that. I stepped in, my voice gentle but firm. Alice, honey, I think you need some time to process all this. Why don't you come stay with me for a few days? She doesn't need to leave her own home, Sam protested, but Alice was already nodding. I think that's a good idea, Mom, she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. I'll pack a bag. As Alice disappeared upstairs, I turned to Sam. I hope, for everyone's sake, that you're telling the truth. But let me be clear. If you've hurt my daughter, there will be consequences. Sam's face hardened. I've done nothing wrong, Lola, and I don't appreciate these accusations. Before I could respond, Alice returned, overnight bag in hand. The sight of her, so lost and vulnerable, broke my heart. I'll call you, she told Sam, not meeting his eyes. I need some space to think. As we walked out the door, I heard Sam call after us, Alice, please, don't do this. But Alice kept walking, her head high despite the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. As I helped her into the car, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over, and I'd be damned if I let anyone, even Sam, hurt my little girl. The days following Alice's confrontation with Sam were a whirlwind of emotions. I watched my daughter oscillate between hope and despair, clinging to the possibility that it was all a misunderstanding while simultaneously preparing for the worst. He's been calling non-stop, Alice sighed, staring at her buzzing phone. We were sitting in my sunroom, the cheerful yellow walls a stark contrast to the gloom hanging over us. Have you answered? I asked, pouring her another cup of chamomile tea. She shook her head. I can't. Not yet, but... She hesitated, biting her lip. I've noticed things, Mom, things I can't ignore anymore. My heart sank. What kind of things, sweetheart? He's been working late more often. His stories about his trips don't add up. And last week I found a receipt for a jewelry store in his jacket pocket. Our anniversary isn't for months. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Oh, Alice? I need to know the truth, she said, her voice steadying with resolve. I'm thinking of hiring a private investigator. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My mind flashed back to Alice's wedding day, her radiant smile as she walked down the aisle of our small-town church. Sam had looked at her like she hung the moon. Where had it all gone wrong? Are you sure that's necessary? I asked, even as I knew the answer. Alice nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I have to know, Mom, one way or another. As much as it pained me, I knew she was right. Okay, honey, if that's what you need to do, I'll support you. The next week was a blur of clandestine meetings and hushed phone calls. Alice found a reputable detective agency, and I helped her gather the information they needed. All the while, Sam's calls and messages continued, growing increasingly desperate. Alice, please? His voice crackled through the speakerphone one evening. Just talk to me. We can work this out. I watched my daughter's face harden, her jaw set in determination. I'll talk to you when I'm ready, Sam. Not before. As she hung up, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. My little girl had grown into a strong, resilient woman, but that strength was tested when, 10 days after hiring the detective, Alice received a thick manila envelope in the mail. It's from the agency, she whispered, her hands shaking as she held it. I sat beside her on the couch, my arm around her shoulders. You don't have to open it right now if you're not ready. Alice took a deep breath. No, I need to know. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal and pulled out a stack of photographs. As we flipped through them, my heart shattered for my daughter. There was Sam armed with a pretty redhead, Sam playing in a park with 2 young children. Sam kissing the woman on the front porch of a quaint suburban home. "Oh, God," Alice choked out, the photos slipping from her grasp and scattering across the floor. I pulled her close, feeling her body rack with sobs. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry." As I held her, my mind raced. How could Sam have done this? How could he have built an entire secret life while married to my daughter? Alice's sobs gradually subsided, replaced by an eerie calm. She pulled away, wiping her eyes, and I saw a steely glint in them that I'd never seen before. "Mom," she said, her voice steady despite the tear tracks on her cheeks. "I need your help. We're going to make Sam pay for what he's done." In that moment, looking at my daughter's determined face, I realized that our ordeal was far from over. It was just beginning. And God help Sam when Alice was through with him. "Whatever you need, honey," I promised, my own resolve hardening. "I'm right here with you." Little did I know just how far we'd go in pursuit of justice and revenge. The morning after we received the detective's photos, I awoke to find Alice's bed empty. Panic gripped me until I heard muffled sounds from the study. I found her hunched over my old desktop computer, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Alice, honey, have you been up all night?" I asked, my voice thick with concern. She looked up, her face a mask of determination and barely contained rage. "I couldn't sleep, Mom. Not after what we saw, so I did some digging of my own." I pulled up a chair beside her, dreading what she might have uncovered. "What did you find?" Alice took a deep breath. "It's worse than we thought. Sam doesn't just have another family. He has another life." She turned the screen towards me, revealing a social media profile for a Samuel Thompson in Oakville. The profile picture showed Sam, our Sam, grinning with his arm around the redhead from the photos. 2 smiling children completed the picture-perfect family portrait. "He's been living a double life for years, Mom," Alice said, her voice cracking. "He has a whole other identity, a successful real estate business in Oakville. Those kids, they're 6 and 4. He's been lying to me our entire marriage." My heart shattered for my daughter all over again. I reached out to comfort her, but she shrugged off my touch, standing abruptly. "I need answers," she declared. "I'm going to Oakville." Alarm bells rang in my head. "Alice, wait. Think this through. What good will confronting them do?" She whirled on me, eyes flashing. "What good? Mom, I need to know the truth. I need to see it with my own eyes. And that woman, Rachel, she deserves to know too." I stood, grasping her shoulders gently. "I understand, sweetheart, but barging in there could be dangerous. We don't know how Sam will react if he's cornered." Alice deflated slightly, sinking back into her chair. "You're right, but I can't just sit here and do nothing." An idea struck me. "What if we bring the mountain to Mohammed?" Alice looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "Sam doesn't know we've uncovered his secret," I explained. "What if we set a trap, invite him home, make him think you're ready to reconcile, then confront him with what we know?" A slow, almost predatory smile spread across Alice's face. "And record everything. Get him to confess on camera." I nodded, a mix of pride and apprehension swirling in my chest. "Exactly. We'll have irrefutable proof, and he won't be able to wiggle his way out of it." Alice's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Sam's number. "I'm calling him now. He'll be so relieved. He won't suspect a thing." As she dialed, I couldn't help but marvel at my daughter's strength. The sweet little girl who once cried over scraped knees was now a force to be reckoned with. "Sam?" Alice's voice was honey-sweet, betraying none of the turmoil beneath. "Hi, it's me. I think I'm ready to talk. Can you come over tonight?" I watched as she masterfully wove a tale of loneliness and regret, luring Sam into our web. When she hung up, her eyes met mine, blazing with determination. "He'll be here at 7, she announced. "We have work to do." The next few hours were a flurry of activity. We set up hidden cameras, prepared a script of questions, and steeled ourselves for the confrontation to come. As the clock ticked closer to 7, I saw Alice's resolve waver for just a moment. "Mom," she whispered, "what if I'm not strong enough to face him?" I cupped her face in my hands, my heart swelling with love and pride. "You are the strongest person I know, Alice. You can do this, and I'll be right here with you every step of the way." The doorbell rang, shattering the moment. Alice straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Let's end this," she said, moving towards the door. As I watched her go, I knew that whatever happened next would change our lives forever. The time for truth had finally come. The tension in the room was palpable as Sam stepped through the doorway. Alice's face was a mask of calm, but I could see the storm brewing behind her eyes. I retreated to the kitchen, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving them space for this confrontation. "Alice, honey, I'm so glad you called." Sam's voice drifted in, sickeningly sweet. "I've missed you so much." "Have you, Sam?" Alice's tone was cool, controlled. "Or have you been too busy with your other family to notice I was gone?" The silence that followed was deafening. I peered around the corner, seeing Sam's face drain of color. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. Alice's laugh was bitter. "Don't insult me, Sam. I know everything. Rachel, the kids in Oakville, your entire double life." Sam's shoulders sagged, the facade crumbling. "Alice, I can explain." "Explain?" Alice's voice rose. "Explain how you've been lying to me our entire marriage? How you have 2 children I knew nothing about?" I watched as Sam reached for her, but Alice recoiled. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "It was a mistake," Sam pleaded. "I never meant for it to go this far. I love you, Alice. You're my wife." "And what's Rachel?" Alice demanded. "What are those children?" Sam's face crumpled. A moment of weakness that spiraled out of control, but I want to make it right. I'll end it with Rachel, I swear. We can start over, just you and me. I felt my blood boil at his audacity. How dare he think he could manipulate his way out of this? Alice's next words chilled me to the bone. "You're right, Sam. We are going to start over, but not in the way you think." She pulled out her phone, playing a video of Sam with his other family. His face paled further. "How did you?" "I hired a private investigator," Alice cut him off. "I have everything documented. Your trips, your fake business, the money you've been funneling to support them." Sam's demeanor changed instantly, desperation replaced by anger. "You had no right to spy on me. And you had no right to betray me," Alice shouted back, "to lie to me every single day for years." I stepped into the room then, unable to stay back any longer. "I think you should leave, Sam." He whirled on me. "This is none of your business, Lola." "My daughter is my business," I retorted, standing my ground. Alice placed a hand on my arm, her voice steady. "It's okay, Mom. Sam was just leaving anyway." Sam's eyes darted between us, realizing he was cornered. "Alice, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. Anything." Alice's voice was dangerously soft. "Then pack your bags and get out of my house. I want you gone by morning." "You can't be serious," Sam sputtered. "Where am I supposed to go?" Alice's smile was cold. "I hear Oakville's nice this time of year." With that, she turned her back on him, effectively dismissing him. Sam stood there, mouth agape, before storming out, slamming the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, Alice collapsed into my arms, her body shaking with sobs. I held her tight, my heart breaking for her pain. "You did it, sweetheart," I murmured. "You stood your ground. I'm so proud of you." Alice pulled back, wiping her eyes. "It's not over, Mom. This is just the beginning." I saw a fierce determination in her gaze that both thrilled and frightened me. "What do you mean?" "Sam thinks he can walk away from this, start over with his other family," Alice said, her voice hardening. "But I won't let him. He needs to face the consequences of his actions." "Alice," I cautioned, "revenge won't heal your pain." She shook her head. "This isn't about revenge, Mom. It's about justice. For me, for those children, even for Rachel. Sam doesn't get to play God with people's lives and walk away unscathed." As I looked at my daughter, I realized she had changed irrevocably. The trusting, loving woman I knew had been replaced by someone harder, more cynical. And as much as it pained me, I knew I had to support her through whatever came next. "What do you need me to do?" I asked, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Alice's smile was grim. "We're going to Oakville, Mom. It's time Rachel learned the truth, too." The weeks following Alice's confrontation with Sam were a whirlwind of activity. My daughter, once so trusting and open, had transformed into a woman on a mission. I watched with a mixture of pride and concern as she meticulously planned her next move. "Mom, I need your help," Alice said one morning, spreading papers across my kitchen table. "We're going to host a family gathering." I raised an eyebrow. "A gathering? Alice, are you sure that's wise?" She nodded, her eyes gleaming with determination. "It's the perfect cover. We'll invite both families, ours and Rachel's. Sam won't be able to refuse without raising suspicions." As much as it pained me, I had to admire her cunning. And then what? Then we expose him, Alice said simply, in front of everyone. The next few days were a flurry of phone calls and preparations. Alice crafted a story about wanting to mend fences with Sam, insisting on a big family dinner to celebrate their reconciliation. I marveled at her ability to keep her voice steady as she spoke to him, not betraying an ounce of her true intentions. The day of the gathering arrived, and I felt sick with anticipation. Alice, however, was the picture of calm as she greeted guests, playing the perfect hostess. "You're doing great, sweetheart," I whispered as I passed her in the hallway. She gave me a tight smile. "I have to, Mom. I can't let him win." As the house filled with chatter and laughter, I kept a watchful eye on Sam. He seemed nervous, constantly checking his phone and glancing at the door. When the doorbell rang again, he visibly tensed. Alice answered it, and I heard her cheerful voice. "Rachel, I'm so glad you could make it. And these must be the kids. Come in, come in." The room fell silent as Rachel entered, confusion etched on her face. Sam's other wife was pretty, with kind eyes that now darted around the room uncertainly. 2 children clung to her legs, sensing the sudden tension. Sam stood frozen, his face ashen. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Before Rachel could respond, Alice stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "I invited her, Sam. I thought it was time our families met, don't you?" The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as understanding dawned on Rachel's face, quickly followed by horror and anger. "Sam," she choked out, "what's going on?" Alice's voice was steel. "Why don't you tell her, Sam? Tell everyone how you've been living a double life, how you have 2 wives, 2 families in 2 different states." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Sam's parents looked shell-shocked, while his sister burst into tears. Rachel stumbled backward, clutching her children close. "Is this true?" she demanded, her voice breaking. Sam's eyes darted wildly around the room, like a cornered animal. I can explain," he stammered. But Alice wasn't done. She produced a folder, spreading documents across the coffee table. "Bank statements, travel records, birth certificates," she announced. "Everything that proves Sam's deception." I watched as Sam's world crumbled around him. His parents turned away in disgust, while Rachel's sobs filled the air. The children, confused and frightened, began to cry. In that moment, I saw Alice falter for the first time. The weight of what she had done, the lives she had upended, seemed to hit her all at once. She swayed slightly, and I rushed to her side. "Alice," I whispered, "maybe we should." But she straightened, shaking off my concern. Her eyes met Sam's, and I saw a flash of the hurt, betrayed woman beneath her hard exterior. "It's over, Sam," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've lost everything." As chaos erupted around us, Rachel's angry shouts, Sam's desperate pleas, the confused cries of family members, I held my daughter close. She had won, but at what cost? The reckoning had come, and none of us would ever be the same. The aftermath of Alice's revelation was chaos incarnate. Shock waves rippled through the room as Sam's duplicitous life lay bare for all to see. I watched, heart-pounding, as the scene unfolded like a car crash in slow motion. Rachel, Sam's other wife, stumbled backward, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. How could you?" she choked out, tears streaming down her face. Sam, pale and sweating, looked frantically between Alice and Rachel. "I can explain," he stammered, but his words fell flat in the charged atmosphere. Alice stood firm, her voice steady despite the trembling I could see in her hands. "There's nothing to explain, Sam. The evidence speaks for itself." As if on cue, Sam's parents stepped forward, his mother's face contorted with anger and shame. "Samuel James Henderson," she hissed, "how dare you bring this disgrace upon our family?" The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, accusations, questions, and cries of disbelief. I moved to Alice's side, ready to support her if needed, but she remained resolute. "Everyone, please," Alice called out, her voice cutting through the noise. "I know this is a shock, but there's more you need to know." She produced a stack of financial documents, spreading them on the coffee table. "Sam hasn't just been lying about his personal life. He's been embezzling from both his companies to fund this double life." Fresh gasps of horror filled the room. Sam's father, a respected businessman himself, looked as if he'd been struck. "Is this true, son?" he demanded. Sam's silence was damning. Rachel, who had been quietly sobbing, suddenly straightened. "The business trips," she said, her voice hollow. "They were never real, were they? You were just shuttling between us." Alice nodded grimly. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I only found out recently myself. As the two women shared a look of understanding, I felt a surge of pride for my daughter's compassion in the face of her own pain. The moment was shattered by Sam's desperate lunge towards the door. You can't do this to me, he shouted, his composure finally cracking. I'll lose everything. Alice's brother-in-law, a burly man named Mike, blocked his path. You've done this to yourself, Sam, he growled. Trapped, Sam whirled back to face the room. His eyes, wild with panic, landed on his children clinging to Rachel's legs. Please, he begged, think of the kids. We can work this out, can't we? It was Rachel who answered, her voice steely with newfound resolve. No, Sam. We can't. It's over. As if those words were a signal, Sam crumpled to the floor, sobbing. The sight of this once charming man reduced to a blubbering mess was almost pitiful. Alice stepped forward, her face a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. I've already contacted both companies' legal departments, she announced. They'll be launching full investigations. And Rachel, she turned to the other woman, I have a lawyer friend who can help you with whatever comes next. Rachel nodded gratefully, pulling her children close. As the initial shock began to wear off, people started to move. Sam's parents huddled in a corner, whispering furiously. Rachel was comforted by some of Alice's friends. And Sam sat alone, abandoned by everyone. I approached Alice, who stood watching it all with an unreadable expression. You did it, sweetheart, I said softly. It's over. She turned to me, and I was startled to see tears in her eyes. Is it, Mom? She whispered. Why doesn't it feel like a victory? Before I could respond, Rachel approached us, her children in tow. Alice, she said hesitantly, I don't know what to say. Thank you seems inadequate, but Alice managed a small smile. That you don't have to say anything. We're both victims here. As the two women embraced, I realized that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The real challenge, healing and moving forward, was just starting. And as I watched my daughter comfort the woman who had unknowingly shared her husband, I knew that whatever came next, Alice would face it with the same strength and grace she'd shown today. The storm had broken, but the aftermath was yet to come. The weeks following Sam's exposure were a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional upheavals, and unexpected alliances. I watched my daughter navigate this storm with a grace and strength that both awed and worried me. One crisp autumn morning, Alice called me over to her house. As I entered, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with Rachel, heads bent over a stack of papers. Mom, Alice said, looking up with tired eyes, we need your advice. I sat down, noting the legal documents spread before them. What's going on, girls? Rachel spoke first, her voice trembling slightly. The divorce proceedings are almost finalized, for both of us. But Sam's trying to claim he has no assets, Alice finished, her jaw clenching. He's trying to leave us both with nothing. My blood boiled at Sam's audacity. That lying, cheating. We know, Mom, Alice cut me off gently. But we have a plan. We just need your help to pull it off. As they outlined their strategy, I felt a mix of pride and apprehension. My daughter and the woman who had unknowingly shared her husband had formed an unlikely alliance, determined to see justice done. The next day found us in a sleek downtown office, facing Sam and his lawyer across a polished conference table. Sam looked haggard, his once charming smile replaced by a permanent scowl. Let's make this quick, his lawyer began. My client has already stated he has no assets to divide. Alice leaned forward, her voice steady. That's interesting, Sam, because Rachel and I have been doing some digging. Sam's face paled as Alice produced a thick folder. We found your offshore accounts, she continued, the ones where you've been funneling money from both your businesses. Rachel chimed in, her quiet voice carrying a newfound strength. We also uncovered the property you bought in the Cayman Islands, the one you thought no one knew about. Sam's lawyer sputtered, but Alice wasn't finished. We're prepared to turn all of this over to the authorities unless you agree to a fair settlement for both of us. The room fell silent as Sam's world crumbled around him once again. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Sam seemed beyond hearing. How? He finally croaked. How did you find out? Alice's smile was cold. You underestimated us, Sam. Both of us. That was your biggest mistake. What followed was a flurry of negotiations, with Sam and his lawyer fighting a losing battle. By the end of the day, both Alice and Rachel had secured fair settlements, ensuring financial stability for themselves and Rachel's children. As we left the office, I saw Alice sag slightly, the weight of the past months finally showing. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "It's over, sweetheart. You did it." She looked at me, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We did it, Mom. I couldn't have gotten through this without you." Rachel approached us, her face a mix of exhaustion and relief. "Alice, I don't know how to thank you." Alice surprised me by pulling Rachel into a hug. We helped each other. That's what matters. As I watched these two women, both betrayed by the same man, find strength in each other, I felt a surge of hope for the future. Months later, we gathered for a small celebration at Alice's house. Rachel and her children were there, along with close friends who had supported us through the ordeal. As I looked around the room, I saw smiles where there had once been tears, laughter where there had been pain. Alice clinked her glass, calling for attention. "I want to make a toast," she said, her voice strong and clear, "to new beginnings, to unlikely friendships, and to the strength we find in ourselves when we're tested." As glasses were raised and cheers echoed, I felt a profound sense of pride. My daughter had faced her darkest hour and emerged not just victorious, but compassionate. She had turned a tale of betrayal into one of resilience and hope. Looking at Alice now, surrounded by love and support, I knew that whatever challenges life might bring, she would face them with the same courage and grace she'd shown throughout this ordeal. And I would be right there beside her, every step of the way. The storm had passed, and in its wake, we had all been transformed. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Alice caught my eye across the room. Her smile, bright and genuine, told me everything I needed to know. We had weathered the storm, and we were stronger for it. The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of my kitchen, startling me so badly I nearly dropped my mug of chamomile tea. It was 11:30 p.m., far too late for a social call. My stomach clenched as I fumbled to answer. "Clara, it's about Peter. There's been an accident." My brother's name, coupled with accident, sent ice through my veins. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He's alive, but it's bad. They've taken him to Mercy General. Can you get there?" I was already grabbing my keys. "I'm on my way." The drive to the hospital was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Peter and I had always been close, despite our occasional squabbles. He was my rock, my confidant. The thought of losing him was unbearable. At the hospital, I found Emily, my sister-in-law, pacing in the waiting room. Her mascara had left dark streaks down her cheeks. "Clara, thank God you're here," she said, throwing her arms around me. I hugged her back, pushing down my own panic. "What happened?" Emily pulled away, wiping her eyes. "He fell down the stairs at home. They think he might have had a stroke first, but they're not sure. He's in surgery now." My mind reeled. Peter was only 41, far too young for a stroke. "Have you called Mom and Dad?" Emily nodded. "They're on their way, but it'll take them a few hours to get here from Florida." A doctor approached us then, his face grave. "Mrs. Lawson, I'm Dr. Reeves. Your husband is out of surgery, but he's in critical condition. We've induced a coma to help reduce brain swelling." Emily gasped, and I grabbed her hand. "Can we see him?" I asked. Dr. Reeves nodded. "Briefly. Follow me." Peter looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, tubes and wires snaking from his body. I felt tears welling up as I took his hand. "Oh, Pete," I whispered. "What happened to you?" Emily stood on the other side of the bed, her face a mask of worry. "The kids are with my sister," she said softly. "I should probably call and update her." I nodded, not taking my eyes off Peter. "Go ahead. I'll stay with him." As soon as Emily left the room, I leaned in close to my brother. "Pete, if you can hear me, you need to fight. We need you here." My eyes fell on Peter's jacket, draped over a chair nearby. A folded piece of paper was peeking out of the pocket. Curiosity got the better of me, and I reached for it. The note was in Peter's handwriting, but the words made no sense. "Clara, if anything happens to me, look in the attic. The truth is hidden there. Be careful who you trust." My heart raced as I read the cryptic message. What truth? And why would Peter write such a thing? I quickly folded the note and slipped it into my own pocket, just as Emily returned. "Any change?" she asked hopefully. I shook my head, guilt gnawing at me for hiding the note. "No, he's still the same." Emily sighed, sinking into a chair. I just don't understand how this could have happened. He was fine when I left for my book club meeting. Something in her tone made me pause. Was that a hint of defensiveness? Before I could ponder it further, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my husband, Alex. "Everything okay? You left without saying anything." I felt a pang of guilt. In my rush to get to the hospital, I hadn't even told Alex where I was going. "At the hospital?" I texted back. "Peter had an accident. It's bad." His reply was immediate. "On my way." As I put my phone away, I caught Emily watching me with an odd expression. It was gone in an instant, replaced by worry for Peter. But as I settled in for a long night at the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Peter's mysterious note burned in my pocket, a harbinger of secrets yet to be revealed. What truth was hidden in the attic? And more importantly, who couldn't I trust? The steady beep of Peter's heart monitor filled the hospital room as I sat by his bedside, my mind drifting to happier times. I remembered summers at our grandparents' lake house, Peter and I chasing fireflies as the sun dipped below the horizon. Those carefree days seemed a lifetime ago now. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Emily's voice startled me from my reverie. I forced a smile. "Just remembering better days." Emily nodded, her eyes never quite meeting mine. "Peter always said you two were inseparable as kids." "We were," I agreed, studying her face. Something about her demeanor felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The weight of Peter's note in my pocket seemed to grow heavier. Just then, Alex arrived, looking harried. "Clara, I came as soon as I could. How is he?" I filled him in on Peter's condition, watching as he and Emily exchanged a look I couldn't quite decipher. A seed of doubt took root in my mind. "Emily," I said, keeping my voice casual, "I was thinking of stopping by your house to pick up some things for Peter. Maybe look for any important papers he might need." A flicker of panic crossed her face before she composed herself. "Oh, I don't think that's necessary. I can handle it." Alex jumped in. "I'm sure Emily's got it under control, Clara. No need to worry about that now." Their eagerness to keep me away from the house only fueled my suspicions. I smiled tightly. Of course, just trying to help. As the night wore on, I found myself watching Emily more closely. The ways she fidgeted with her wedding ring, her hushed conversations with Alex in the hallway, it all felt wrong somehow. When Emily stepped out to make a call, I turned to Alex. "Don't you think Emily's acting strange?" He frowned. "She's worried about her husband, Clara. We all are." "It's more than that," I insisted. "And why are you two so adamant about me not going to their house?" Alex's expression hardened. "What are you implying?" Before I could respond, my parents burst into the room, faces etched with worry. The conversation with Alex would have to wait. As Mom fussed over Peter and Dad spoke with the doctors, I slipped out to get some air. In the quiet hospital garden, I pulled out Peter's note, reading it again. "The truth is hidden there. Be careful who you trust." Who couldn't I trust? Emily? Alex? The thought of my husband being involved in whatever this was made my stomach churn. Lost in thought, I didn't notice Emily approach until she spoke. "What's that?" I quickly pocketed the note. "Nothing important." Emily's eyes narrowed. "You know, Clara, I've always admired how close you and Peter are, but sometimes I wonder if you're a little too involved in our lives." Her words carried a subtle threat that sent a chill down my spine. "He's my brother, Emily. Of course I'm involved." "Just remember," she said, her voice low, "family can be complicated. Sometimes it's best not to dig too deep." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me stunned. The seed of doubt blossomed into full-blown suspicion. Back in Peter's room, I watched as Emily played the role of devoted wife, my parents none the wiser. Alex caught my eye, his expression unreadable. In that moment, I made a decision. I had to know what was in that attic, no matter the cost. Peter's life might depend on it. As everyone fussed over Peter, I slipped out, determination fueling my steps. I'd go to their house now while Emily was distracted. In the parking lot, I fumbled for my keys, my heart racing. A hand on my shoulder made me jump. "Going somewhere?" Alex asked, his voice tight with suspicion. I turned to face him, my resolve strengthening. "I'm going to find out what's really going on, Alex. Are you going to stop me?" His answer would determine everything. Alex's grip on my shoulder tightened. "Clara, you're not thinking straight. Let's go back inside." I shrugged him off, anger bubbling up inside me. "No, Alex, I'm thinking clearer than I have in years. What's going on?" Why are you and Emily so determined to keep me away from Peter's house? His face hardened. You're being paranoid. Emily's worried about her husband and you're seeing conspiracies everywhere. Am I? I pulled out Peter's note. Then explain this. Alex's eyes widened as he read it. Where did you get that? From Peter's jacket. Now, are you going to tell me what's really happening, or do I need to find out for myself? He ran a hand through his hair, looking conflicted. Clara, please, just let this go, for all our sakes. His evasiveness only fueled my determination. I can't believe this. You're involved, aren't you? What are you and Emily hiding? Keep your voice down, Alex hissed, glancing around the parking lot. You don't understand what you're getting into. I laughed bitterly. Then explain it to me, Alex, because right now it looks like my husband and my sister-in-law are involved in something that put my brother in the hospital. Alex's face flushed with anger. You want to know the truth? Fine. Emily and we've been seeing each other. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? It's been going on for a while, he continued, his voice low. Peter found out. That's why he wrote that note. He was going to tell you. But then he conveniently had an accident, I finished, feeling sick. Alex's eyes widened. No, we had nothing to do with that. It was just a terrible coincidence. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. How can I believe anything you say now? Clara, please. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me, I spat. How could you do this? To me, to Peter? It wasn't supposed to happen, Alex said, his voice pleading. We never meant to hurt anyone. Well, congratulations, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You've succeeded spectacularly. Just then, Emily appeared at the hospital entrance. Her eyes darted between us, realization dawning on her face. What's going on? She asked, approaching cautiously. I turned to her, fury coursing through my veins. Why don't you ask your lover? Emily paled. Clara, I can explain. Save it. I cut her off. I don't want to hear your excuses. What I want to know is what really happened to my brother. Emily's eyes flashed with panic. It was an accident. You can't possibly think. I don't know what to think anymore, I interrupted. But I'm going to find out the truth, with or without your help. Alex stepped between us. Clara, you're upset. Let's not do anything rash. I laughed humorlessly. Rash? Like having an affair with your wife's sister-in-law? Or covering up whatever happened to Peter? We're not covering anything up, Emily insisted. Peter fell. That's all there is to it. But the fear in her eyes told a different story. I turned to Alex, my heart breaking. I want a separation. I can't even look at you right now. His face crumpled. Clara, please. We can work this out. Work what out? I asked, my voice rising. The fact that you've been lying to me for God knows how long? That you're somehow involved in whatever happened to my brother? You're jumping to conclusions, Alex said, his own anger flaring. If this is how little you trust me, maybe a separation is a good idea. His words hit me like a physical blow. Fine, I said, my voice cold. I'll be staying at Peter's house. Someone needs to look after his kids while their mother is otherwise occupied. Emily flinched at the barb. Clara, don't do this. Think of the family. I am thinking of the family, I retorted. The family you two seem intent on destroying. With that, I turned and walked to my car, ignoring their calls. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror standing close together, united in their deceit. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I headed towards Peter's house, determined to uncover the truth hidden in the attic. Whatever secrets lay there, I was ready to face them, no matter the cost. The key trembled in my hand as I unlocked Peter's front door. The house was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. I flicked on the lights, half expecting Emily or Alex to jump out and stop me. But I was alone, surrounded by the remnants of my brother's life. I made my way upstairs, Peter's note burning a hole in my pocket. The attic door loomed before me, a portal to truths I both craved and feared. With a deep breath, I turned the handle and stepped into the musty darkness. Fumbling for the light switch, I illuminated a cluttered space filled with boxes and forgotten memories. Where to start? I began rifling through the nearest stack, my heart pounding with each document I uncovered. Hours passed as I sifted through years of accumulated papers. Just as frustration threatened to overwhelm me, a small lockbox caught my eye. It was tucked behind an old suitcase, almost hidden from view. With shaking hands, I pried it open, gasping at its contents. Inside were photos, dozens of them, of Emily with Alex. The timestamps spanned years, long before Peter's accident. My stomach churned as I realized the depth of their deception, but it was the document beneath the photos that made my blood run cold. A life insurance policy for Peter, taken out just months ago, with Emily as the sole beneficiary. The amount was staggering. "Oh God," I whispered, the pieces falling into place. This wasn't just an affair, it was something far more sinister. The sound of a car pulling up jolted me from my horrified trance. Peering out the attic window, I saw Emily's car in the driveway. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to replace the lockbox and erase any signs of my presence. I had just made it to the bottom of the attic stairs when the front door opened. Emily's voice called out, "Clara, are you here?" Forcing calm into my voice, I replied, "Up here. Just checking on some things for Peter." Emily appeared at the foot of the stairs, her face a mask of concern. "You shouldn't be here alone. Why don't you come back to the hospital?" I descended slowly, my mind racing. "I'm fine, Emily. Just needed some time to process everything." Her eyes darted to the attic door behind me. "Find anything interesting up there?" The loaded question hung in the air between us. I met her gaze steadily. Nothing worth mentioning. Yet. A flicker of something, fear, crossed her face before she composed herself. "Well, I'm here to pick up some things for Peter and to check on the kids. They're with my sister, but I thought I'd grab some of their favorite toys." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As Emily busied herself gathering items, I retreated to the living room, my mind whirling with the implications of what I discovered. My phone buzzed, a text from Alex. "We need to talk. Please come home." Home. The word felt hollow now, tainted by lies and betrayal. I typed back a curt reply. "Nothing to discuss. I'm staying at Peter's." Emily's voice startled me. "Everything okay?" I looked up to find her watching me intently. "Fine," I lied. "Just updating Alex on the situation." She nodded, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Clara, I know things are strained right now, but we're still family. If you need anything." The irony of her words nearly choked me. "What I need," I said carefully, "is for my brother to wake up and tell me what really happened that night." Emily paled slightly. "We all want that, but the doctors say we need to be patient." As she turned to leave, a sudden resolve crystallized within me. I couldn't confront her now, not without more evidence. But I also couldn't let her and Alex continue their charade unchallenged. "Emily," I called out, causing her to pause at the door. "I'll be staying here to look after the kids. I'm sure you understand." Our eyes locked, an unspoken battle of wills. Finally, she nodded. "Of course, that's very kind of you." As her car pulled away, I sank onto the couch, the weight of my discoveries pressing down on me. I knew what I had to do next, but the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. With trembling fingers, I dialed a number I never thought I'd use. "Detective Johnson, it's Clara Lawson. I need to report a possible attempted murder." The days blurred together as I settled into a routine at Peter's house, caring for my niece and nephew while juggling hospital visits and clandestine meetings with Detective Johnson. The kids, Lily and Max, were a welcome distraction from the turmoil in my life, their innocence a stark contrast to the web of lies I was unraveling. One afternoon, as I helped Lily with her homework, my phone buzzed with a text from the detective. "New information. Meet ASAP." My heart raced as I arranged for a neighbor to watch the kids. At the local diner, Detective Johnson slid a file across the table. "We've been looking into Emily's financials," he said in a low voice. "There's something you need to see." I flipped open the folder, my eyes widening at the contents. Bank statements showed large transfers from Emily's account to an offshore entity, starting just weeks before Peter's accident. "This doesn't prove anything," I whispered, though hope flared in my chest. The detective leaned in. "No, but it's suspicious. We're also looking into Alex's involvement. His alibi for the night of the accident is shaky at best." As I left the diner, my mind reeled with possibilities. I was so distracted that I almost missed the familiar car parked down the street, Alex's car. Anger and betrayal surged through me as I stormed over, rapping on the window. Alex jumped, then reluctantly rolled it down. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. He had the decency to look ashamed. I was worried about you, Clara. You haven't been returning my calls." "So you decided to stalk me instead?" Alex sighed. "I saw you with that man." Who is he? I laughed bitterly. Now you're concerned about who I'm meeting. That's rich coming from you. His face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know, Alex, about the affair, about the money. What I don't know is how deeply you're involved in what happened to Peter. The color drained from his face. Clara, you've got it all wrong. Let me explain. But I was already walking away, my heart pounding. I couldn't bear to hear more lies. Back at Peter's house, I found Emily waiting on the porch, the kids playing in the yard. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight. I steeled myself, gesturing for her to come inside. In the kitchen, Emily paced nervously. I know you've been digging, she began, but you don't understand the whole picture. I crossed my arms. Then enlighten me. Emily took a deep breath. Peter and I, our marriage wasn't what it seemed. He had debts, Clara, dangerous ones. The money you found? It was to pay them off, to keep us safe. I stared at her, disbelief warring with a flicker of doubt. And the affair with Alex? She flinched. A mistake, one I deeply regret, but it has nothing to do with what happened to Peter. So you expect me to believe it's all just a coincidence? The affair, the money, Peter's accident? Emily's filled with tears. I know how it looks, but I swear, I had nothing to do with Peter's fall. I loved him, despite everything. As she spoke, I noticed something poking out of her purse, the corner of what looked like the lockbox I'd found in the attic. In that moment, everything crystallized. Emily wasn't here to explain. She was here to cover her tracks. Get out, I said, my voice shaking with fury. Emily blinked, taken aback. Clara, please. Get out now, or I swear I'll call the police this instant. She hesitated, then grabbed her purse and fled. As the door slammed behind her, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the weight of betrayal and lies. My phone buzzed. Another text from Detective Johnson. Breakthrough in the case. Need to meet immediately. I stared at the message, knowing that my next move would change everything. The truth was within reach, but at what cost? With trembling fingers, I typed my reply. I'm ready. Let's end this. As I hit send, I knew there was no turning back. Whatever came next, I was prepared to face it head-on, for Peter, for the kids, and for the truth that had eluded us for far too long. The world seemed to spin around me as I sat in Detective Johnson's office, staring at the evidence laid out before us. Photos, financial records, and witness statements painted a damning picture of Emily and Alex's involvement in Peter's accident. We have enough to bring them in for questioning, Johnson said, his voice grave. But we need your statement to tie it all together. I nodded, my throat tight. I'm ready. As I recounted everything I'd discovered, from the mysterious note to the hidden lockbox, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The truth was finally coming to light, but at what cost to my family? Just as I finished my statement, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the hospital. Peter showing signs of waking up. Come immediately. My heart leapt. I have to go, I told Johnson, already halfway out the door. At the hospital, I found my mother, Linda, already there, her face etched with worry and hope. Clara, thank goodness you're here, she said, pulling me into a tight hug. We watched through the window as doctors swarmed around Peter's bed. His fingers twitched, then his eyelids fluttered. It was happening. He was waking up. As we waited anxiously, I filled Mom in on everything that had happened. Her face paled, then hardened with resolve. Oh, Clara, she said, squeezing my hand. You've been carrying this burden alone for too long, but not anymore. We'll face this together. Her words washed over me like a balm, easing some of the loneliness I'd been feeling. But our moment of connection was shattered by the arrival of Emily and Alex, bursting into the waiting room. What's going on? Emily demanded, her eyes darting between us and Peter's room. Before I could respond, Detective Johnson appeared behind them, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Emily Lawson, Alexander Lawson, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of Peter Lawson and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. The next few minutes were chaos. Emily screamed denials while Alex went pale and silent. As the officers led them away, Emily's eyes locked on mine, filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. This isn't over, Clara, she hissed. You have no idea what you've done. I stood my ground, Mom's hand firm in mine. No, Emily, you have no idea what you've done. To this family, to Peter, to those kids. As they disappeared down the hallway, a doctor emerged from Peter's room. He's awake and asking for Clara. With shaking legs, I entered the room. Peter's eyes were open, though unfocused. When he saw me, a weak smile crossed his face. "Clara," he whispered, "you found it." I leaned in close. "Found what, Pete?" His voice was barely audible. "The truth. In the attic. But there's more. Danger." Before he could finish, his eyes rolled back and the monitors started blaring. Doctors and nurses rushed in, pushing me aside as they worked to stabilize him. I stumbled back into the hallway, my mind reeling. What more could there be? What danger was Peter trying to warn me about? Mom was there, steadying me. "What happened? What did he say?" I opened my mouth to respond, but movement at the end of the hall caught my eye. A figure in a hoodie was watching us, their face hidden in shadow. As our eyes met, they turned and ran. Without thinking, I took off after them, ignoring Mom's calls. I chased the figure down flights of stairs and out into the parking lot, my heart pounding. Just as I thought I'd lost them, a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me behind a parked van. I found myself face to face with a woman I'd never seen before, her eyes wild with fear. "Are you Clara?" she asked urgently. I nodded, too out of breath to speak. "Listen carefully," she said, glancing around nervously. "Emily and Alex aren't working alone. There's a bigger conspiracy at play, and you're in danger. We don't have much time." As she spoke, I saw a black SUV pull into the lot, its tinted windows hiding the occupants. The woman's grip on my arm tightened. "You have a choice to make, Clara. Run now and stay safe, or dive deeper and risk everything to uncover the whole truth. What's it going to be?" My heart pounded as I made my split-second decision. "I'm in. Tell me everything." The woman, who introduced herself as Sarah, quickly ushered me into her car. As we sped away from the hospital, she filled me in on a conspiracy that made my head spin. Emily and Alex were just pawns in a larger game involving corporate espionage and money laundering. Peter had stumbled upon evidence that could bring down an entire criminal network. "That's why they tried to silence him," Sarah explained. "And now they're after you." We arrived at a safe house where Sarah showed me files that corroborated her story. My mind reeled as I recognized names of family, friends, and business associates entangled in this web of deceit. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Clara, where are you? Emily's been released on bail and she's here at the house. She's demanding to see you." My blood ran cold. "Mom, listen carefully. You need to get out of there now. Go to Aunt Marge's and wait for my call." "Clara, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Please, Mom, trust me. I'll explain everything soon." After ensuring Mom was safe, Sarah and I formulated a plan. We needed to retrieve the final piece of evidence from Peter's attic. Evidence he had hinted at before losing consciousness again. As we approached Peter's house, I saw Emily's car in the driveway. Sarah handed me a small recording device. "Be careful. Get her to talk, but don't let on what you know." With trembling hands, I entered the house. Emily was in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. When she saw me, her eyes flashed with a mixture of relief and anger. "Clara, thank God, you have to help me. These accusations are insane. You know I would never hurt Peter." I steeled myself, remembering Sarah's advice. "Then explain the money transfers, Emily. Explain the affair with Alex." Her face crumpled. "It's not what you think. We were being blackmailed. There are people, powerful people, who—" Suddenly the front door burst open. Alex stormed in, his face a mask of fury. "Emily, shut up. You have no idea what you're dealing with." I backed away, my heart racing. "Alex, what are you doing here?" His eyes darted between Emily and me. "Cleaning up this mess. I'm sorry, Clara, but you've left me no choice." As he reached into his jacket, I saw the glint of a gun. Time seemed to slow down. I lunged for the nearest object, a heavy vase, and hurled it at him. The gun went off, the bullet splintering the wood beside my head. Emily screamed, diving for cover. I scrambled towards the stairs, Alex's footsteps thundering behind me. I reached the attic door, fumbling with the lock as another shot rang out. Finally inside, I frantically searched for Peter's hidden evidence. Where was it? The sound of Alex ascending the stairs spurred me on. Just as my hand closed around a small USB drive tucked behind a loose floorboard, the attic door flew open. Alex stood there, gun trained on me, his eyes cold. "Hand it over, Clara. Now." I clutched the drive to my chest. "Why, Alex? How could you be involved in this?" His laugh was hollow. "You have no idea how deep this goes. The money, the power, it's beyond anything you can imagine." As he stepped closer, I heard sirens in the distance. Alex's head whipped towards the sound, momentarily distracted. It was now or never. I charged at him, catching him off guard. We grappled for the gun, our struggle bringing us dangerously close to the attic window. With a final, desperate shove, I felt Alex lose his balance. Time seemed to stand still as I watched him fall, his eyes wide with shock. The sickening thud that followed would haunt me forever. Shaking uncontrollably, I made my way downstairs to find Sarah and the police bursting in. Emily was nowhere to be seen. As the officers swarmed the house, Sarah approached me. "It's over, Clara. You did it." But as I handed over the USB drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The cost had been too high, the revelations too earth-shattering. As I watched the chaos unfold around me, one question burned in my mind. Where do we go from here? The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took the stand, my mother's encouraging nod from the gallery stealing my resolve. This was it, the moment of truth that would expose the web of lies and deceit that had nearly destroyed our family. As the prosecutor guided me through my testimony, I recounted every shocking detail. The affair, the conspiracy, the attempt on Peter's life. With each revelation, I watched Emily's face contort with a mixture of rage and desperation. "And what did you find on the USB drive, Miss Lawson?" the prosecutor asked. I took a deep breath. Financial records proving that Emily and Alex were part of a larger criminal organization. They were laundering money through Peter's company, and when he discovered it, they tried to silence him. Emily leapt to her feet. "She's lying. Clara's always been jealous of me, of my relationship with Peter." The judge called for order as Emily's outburst echoed through the courtroom. As she was restrained, our eyes met. In that moment, I saw not just anger, but fear. The fear of a cornered animal. After I stepped down, Mom took the stand. Her testimony about the changes she'd observed in Peter and Emily's relationship and the suspicious behavior leading up to the accident further solidified our case. As the trial concluded and we awaited the verdict, Mom squeezed my hand. "No matter what happens, Clara, I'm proud of you. We've done the right thing." The jury's decision was swift and unanimous, guilty on all counts. As Emily was led away, her mask of innocence finally crumbled. "You'll regret this, Clara," she screamed. "You have no idea what you've done." In the days that followed, the full extent of the conspiracy came to light. Respected community members were arrested, businesses were shuttered, and our quiet town was left reeling from the scandal. Through it all, Mom and I stood strong, supporting each other and helping Peter through his recovery. His memory of the accident was still hazy, but with each passing day, he grew stronger. One evening as we sat on the porch of our childhood home, Peter turned to me. "Clara, I can't thank you enough for what you've done. You saved my life, and you saved our family." I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "We saved each other, Pete. That's what family does." Mom joined us carrying a tray of lemonade. "My brave children," she said, her eyes misty. "I always knew you were fighters, but you've shown more strength than I ever imagined." As we sat there watching the sunset, I reflected on the tumultuous journey we'd been through. The pain, the betrayal, the fear, it had all led to this moment of peace and unity. "What happens now?" Peter asked, voicing the question we'd all been pondering. I took a sip of lemonade, considering. "We rebuild, we heal, and we move forward together." Mom nodded, her face resolute. "And we remember the lessons we've learned. Trust your instincts, stand up for what's right, and never underestimate the power of family." In that moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Despite everything we'd been through, our family had emerged stronger, our bonds unbreakable. As the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, I made a silent vow. We would face whatever challenges came our way with the same courage and determination that had brought us through this ordeal. The road ahead might be uncertain, but one thing was clear. Together, we could weather any storm. "To family," I said, raising my glass. "To family?" Mom and Peter echoed, their voices filled with love and hope. As we clinked our glasses together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The secrets were out, the truth had prevailed, and our family stood united. Whatever the future held, we would face it head-on, stronger and wiser than ever before. The end of this chapter marked not just the conclusion of a harrowing ordeal, but the beginning of a new journey, one of healing, growth, and unshakable family bonds. As the night deepened around us, I knew that the strength we'd found in each other would guide us through whatever lay ahead. Our family's story was far from over. It was just beginning anew. "I do," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of joy and trepidation. The words echoed through the small chapel, sealing my fate in ways I couldn't have imagined. Joe beamed at me, his dark eyes twinkling with love and promise. As we turned to face our small gathering of family and friends, I caught sight of my new mother-in-law, Brenda. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Hartley," the officiant announced. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. My mind was racing, replaying the whirlwind romance that had led to this moment. Just 6 months ago, I was drowning in grief after losing my mother. Now, here I was, starting a new chapter of my life. As we made our way down the aisle, Joe squeezed my hand. "You okay, Lily?" he whispered. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just overwhelmed," I replied. The reception was a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. I found myself constantly searching the crowd for Brenda, feeling an inexplicable need to keep her in my sights. "Lily, darling!" Brenda's saccharine voice cut through the chatter. She glided towards us, arms outstretched. "Welcome to the family, dear." Her embrace was stiff, her perfume cloying. As she pulled away, she gripped my shoulders, her manicured nails digging in slightly. "We're going to be so close, you and I, like mother and daughter." I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Joe, oblivious to the tension, wrapped an arm around his mother. "Isn't this great, Mom? I couldn't be happier." Brenda's eyes never left mine. "Oh yes, it's just wonderful." The rest of the evening passed in a haze. As we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, Brenda cornered me near the coat check. "Lily, dear," she began, her voice low, "I hate to bring this up on your special day, but I've been so worried lately." I frowned, concern creeping in. "What's wrong, Brenda?" She sighed dramatically. "It's just, the house feels so empty since Joe moved out. I'm not as young as I used to be, you know." The thought of living alone? My heart sank as I realized where this was going. Before I could respond, Joe appeared at my side. "Ready to go, Mrs. Hartley?" he asked, grinning. I nodded, grateful for the interruption. As we walked away, I glanced back to see Brenda watching us, a calculating look in her eyes. 2 weeks later, we returned from our honeymoon to find Brenda waiting on our doorstep, suitcases in tow. "Surprise!" she exclaimed, rushing to embrace Joe. "I've decided to take you up on your offer to stay for a while." Joe looked bewildered. "Offer? Mom, what are you talking about?" Brenda's lower lip trembled. "Oh, Joey, don't you remember? We discussed it at the wedding. You said I should come stay with you and Lily if I was feeling lonely." I watched in horror as Joe's face softened. "Of course. Mom, I'm sorry, I must have forgotten. Right, Lily? We did discuss this, didn't we?" Trapped, I nodded weakly. "Yes, of course. Welcome, Brenda." As we helped her move her belongings inside, I caught Brenda smirking at me when Joe wasn't looking. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the battle I was about to face. That night, as Joe slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. How had my fresh start turned into this? I was a doctor, for heaven's sake. I saved lives every day. Surely, I could handle one meddling mother-in-law. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a nightmare that would test every ounce of my strength and patience. The shrill beeping of my alarm jolted me awake. I groaned, reaching for my phone to silence it. 4:30 a.m. Another early shift at the ER. As I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Joe, I caught a whiff of something burning. Panic surged through me as I rushed downstairs, only to find Brenda in the kitchen, surrounded by smoke. "Oh, good morning, dear," she chirped, waving a dishcloth at the smoking toaster. "I thought I'd make you breakfast before your shift." I forced a smile, my heart still racing. "That's thoughtful, Brenda, but I really need to get ready." Her face fell. "But I went to all this trouble. The least you could do is sit down and eat." Guilt gnawed at me as I glanced at the clock. "I'm sorry, I just don't have time." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "I see. Well, don't let me keep you from your important work." The drive to the hospital was tense, my mind replaying Brenda's words. By the time I arrived, I was already exhausted. "Rough night, Dr. Hartley?" my colleague Sarah asked as I entered the ER. I sighed. "You have no idea." The shift was brutal. A multi-car pileup had us working nonstop for hours. As I was finishing up with a patient, my phone buzzed. A text from Joe. "Mom says you left without eating. Everything okay?" I bit back a groan. Before I could respond, Sarah called out, "Lily, we need you. Cardiac arrest coming in." By the time I got home, I was dead on my feet. The house was spotless, and the aroma of a home-cooked meal filled the air. "Welcome home, honey," Joe greeted me with a kiss. "Mom made dinner. Isn't she amazing?" Brenda appeared, all smiles. "I hope you're hungry, Lily. I've been cooking all day." I plastered on a smile. "It smells wonderful. Thank you, Brenda." As we sat down to eat, Brenda dominated the conversation, regaling Joe with tales of her day. I pushed my food around, too tired to eat. "Lily, dear," Brenda's voice cut through my haze. "Don't you like the food? I made it especially for you." "It's delicious," I lied. "I'm just tired." Joe frowned. "Maybe you're working too hard, honey. Mom was saying earlier that she's worried about you." I looked up, startled. "She was?" Brenda nodded, her eyes wide with feigned concern. "Of course, dear. I told Joey how you rushed out this morning without eating. It's not healthy." "I had an early shift," I started to explain, but Brenda cut me off. "And you're always so tired when you get home. It's not fair to Joey, is it? He needs a wife, not a zombie." Joe shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, I'm sure Lily's doing her best." "Of course she is." Brenda patted his hand. I just worry, that's all. Maybe if she cut back her hours." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm going to bed. Good night." As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I heard Joe and Brenda's muffled voices downstairs. My stomach churned with anxiety. How had I become the bad guy in my own home? The next morning, I woke to find a note from Joe. "Had to leave early for a meeting. Mom's making breakfast. Love you." I steeled myself before heading downstairs. Brenda was at the stove, humming cheerfully. "Good morning, Lily," she said without turning around. "I hope you slept well. I was just telling Joey how worried I am about you." I gritted my teeth. "Brenda, we need to talk." She turned, her face a mask of innocence. "Of course, dear. What about?" As I opened my mouth to speak, my phone rang. The hospital. Another emergency. Brenda's lips curved into a smirk. "Duty calls, I suppose. We'll talk later, dear. Have a good day at work." As I rushed out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing control of my life, one day at a time. The ER doors burst open as paramedics rushed in with a critical patient. "Female, mid-60s, possible heart attack," one shouted. My heart nearly stopped. The woman on the gurney was Brenda. "Lily," she gasped, reaching for my hand. "I'm so sorry." I pushed my emotions aside and snapped into doctor mode. "Get her to Bay 3 stat!" Hours later, I slumped against the wall outside Brenda's room, exhausted. We'd stabilized her, but it had been touch and go. Joe appeared, his face pale with worry. "How is she?" "She's stable," I assured him, "but she'll need to stay for observation." He hugged me tightly. "Thank God you were here. I don't know what I'd do without either of you." Guilt gnawed at me. Despite everything, I'd saved Brenda's life. But as I watched Joe fuss over his mother, I couldn't help but wonder, would she see this as a peace offering or another reason to resent me? The next few days were a whirlwind. I juggled my shifts with visiting Brenda, all while trying to keep our home running smoothly. Joe was a constant presence at his mother's bedside, leaving me to handle everything else. On the day of Brenda's discharge, I arrived at the hospital to find her holding court with a group of nurses. "Oh, Lily dear," she cooed as I entered. "I was just telling these lovely ladies how fortunate I am to have such a dedicated daughter-in-law. She's been working herself to the bone, hasn't she?" The nurses nodded sympathetically, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this experience had changed things between us. That hope was short-lived. As soon as we got home, Brenda's sweet facade crumbled. "Well, I suppose I should be grateful you didn't let me die," she sniffed. "Though it would have been nice if you'd visited more. Poor Joey was so worried." I bit my tongue, reminding myself she was still recovering. "I'm sorry, Brenda. I was trying to keep things running smoothly here." She waved dismissively. Yes, always so busy with your important job. Speaking of which, don't you think it's time you took a break? After all, I'll need someone to look after me while I recover." My jaw dropped. "Brenda, I can't just quit my job." "Why not?" she challenged. "Joey makes enough to support us all. And really, Lily, what kind of wife puts her career before her family?" Before I could respond, Joe walked in. "Everything okay in here?" Brenda's eyes instantly filled with tears. "Oh, Joey, I was just telling Lily how overwhelmed I feel. The doctor said I need constant care, and with Lily working such long hours." Joe frowned, turning to me. Honey, maybe you should take some time off, just until Mom's back on her feet. I stared at him, disbelieving. Joe, I can't just... Please, Lily, he pleaded. For me, for us. I felt the walls closing in. My career, my independence, everything I'd worked for was slipping away. That night, I tossed and turned, Joe's words echoing in my head. By morning, I'd made my decision. With shaking hands, I dialed the hospital. Dr. Reeves? It's Lily Hartley. I need to take a leave of absence. As I hung up, I caught sight of Brenda in the doorway, a triumphant smile on her face. Oh, Lily, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm so glad you're finally putting family first. Now be a dear and fetch my breakfast, won't you? I'm feeling a bit weak this morning. As I trudged downstairs, the reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd saved Brenda's life, only to become a prisoner in my own home. How had it come to this? And more importantly, how was I going to survive it? The days blurred together in a haze of endless chores and Brenda's constant demands. I'd gone from saving lives to folding laundry and preparing meals that were never quite good enough for my mother-in-law's discerning palate. Lily, dear, Brenda's shrill voice pierced through my thoughts. Be a lamb and fetch my reading glasses. I seem to have misplaced them again. I bit back a sigh, forcing a smile. Of course, Brenda. I'll look for them right away. As I searched the house, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, pale, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. What had happened to the confident doctor I used to be? Lily, Brenda called again, impatience lacing her tone. What's taking so long? I found the glasses perched on top of her head and wordlessly handed them to her. She sniffed. Really, Lily? You'd think a doctor would be more observant. Oh, wait. You're not a doctor anymore, are you? The word stung, but I swallowed my retort. Joe would be home soon, and I couldn't bear another argument. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, Brenda launched into her usual critique of my cooking. The chicken's a bit dry, don't you think, Joey? And these vegetables are terribly overcooked. Joe, engrossed in his phone, merely grunted in response. You know, Brenda continued, I was thinking, now that Lily's not working, perhaps we should consider redecorating. This house could use a woman's touch. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? Brenda waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't worry, dear. I'll handle everything. After all, I have much more experience in these matters. This is our home, Brenda, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. Joe and I like it the way it is. She turned to Joe, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. Joey, don't you think the house could use some sprucing up? Your father and I always kept our home so lovely. Joe finally looked up from his phone. Yeah, sure, whatever you think, Mom. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I need some air. Outside, I gulped in the cool night air, trying to calm my racing heart. How had I let things get this far? I was a prisoner in my own home, my identity slowly being erased by Brenda's constant manipulations. As I paced the backyard, a memory surfaced. My mother's voice, strong and clear. Never let anyone dim your light, Lily. You're meant to shine. Tears pricked my eyes. What would my mom think if she could see me now? The back door creaked open, and Joe stepped out. Lily? You okay? I turned to face him, suddenly angry. No, Joe. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay for a long time. He frowned. What are you talking about? Your mother, Joe. The way she treats me, the way she's taken over our lives. I can't do this anymore. Joe's face hardened. Come on, Lily. Mom's just trying to help. You're being oversensitive. Oversensitive? I laughed bitterly. I gave up my career, my independence, everything for you and your mother. And you can't even see what's happening. What's happening is that you're acting ungrateful, Joe snapped. Mom's done nothing but try to make our lives easier? I stared at him, realizing with a sinking heart that I was truly alone in this battle. You're right, Joe. I am ungrateful. Ungrateful that I married a man who can't see his wife drowning right in front of him. With that, I stormed past him into the house, ignoring Brenda's inquiring looks. In our bedroom, I pulled out a suitcase and began throwing clothes into it. As I zipped it shut, I caught sight of my medical ID badge lying forgotten on the dresser. I picked it up, running my thumb over my name and title. Dr. Lily Hartley, Emergency Medicine. In that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't change Brenda, and I couldn't make Joe see the truth. But I could change myself. It was time to reclaim my life, whatever the cost. I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by a whirlwind of activity, my hands raw from scrubbing and chopping. Brenda's voice rang out from the living room where she sat directing operations like a general. "Lily, dear, don't forget the petit fours need to be arranged just so, and make sure the champagne is properly chilled." I gritted my teeth, fighting back the urge to scream. Brenda's grand party had consumed our lives for weeks. My suitcase, packed in a moment of desperation, still sat hidden in our closet. I hadn't been able to bring myself to leave, not yet. Joe breezed into the kitchen, adjusting his tie. "Wow, honey, everything looks great. Mom's really outdone herself this time, hasn't she?" I froze, the knife in my hand trembling slightly. "Joe, I've been cooking and cleaning for days. Your mother hasn't lifted a finger." He frowned, confusion clouding his features. "But Mom said she's been working tirelessly on this party. She even mentioned how you've been struggling to keep up." Before I could respond, Brenda swept into the room, resplendent in a glittering gown. "Joey, darling, don't you look handsome? Lily, why aren't you dressed yet? The guests will be arriving any minute." I looked down at my flour-stained apron and disheveled appearance. "I've been busy preparing everything, Brenda. I haven't had time to—" "Tsk, tsk," Brenda interrupted, shaking her head. "Really, Lily, I expected better from you. This party is so important to me. Couldn't you have made more of an effort?" Joe shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, maybe you're being a little harsh. Lily's been working hard." Brenda's eyes welled with tears. "Oh, Joey, I'm just so disappointed. I wanted everything to be perfect. After all I've been through, is that too much to ask?" As Joe moved to comfort his mother, the doorbell rang. Guests had begun to arrive. "Lily, go make yourself presentable," Brenda ordered, her tone brooking no argument. "And do hurry." The next few hours were a blur of forced smiles and polite small talk. I circulated the room, refilling glasses and passing hors d'oeuvres, all while Brenda held court, regaling her friends with tales of her recovery and how she'd single-handedly planned this magnificent soiree. "And of course, I couldn't have done it without my dear daughter-in-law," Brenda announced, beckoning me over. "Lily, darling, come here and tell everyone how much you've enjoyed helping me." All eyes turned to me, expectant. I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my back as I struggled to find words. I'm always happy to help family," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Brenda's smile tightened. "Oh, come now, Lily. Don't be modest. Tell them about all the wonderful ideas you contributed." "Oh, wait," she paused, her eyes glittering maliciously. "I forgot. You didn't contribute any ideas, did you? You were too busy moping about your lost career to be of any real help." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Joe, standing nearby, looked stricken. "Mom, what are you saying?" Brenda turned to him, her face a mask of innocence. "Oh, Joey, I'm just trying to help Lily come out of her shell. She's been so withdrawn lately. I worry about her, you know." I stood there, humiliation burning through me, as Brenda continued to twist the knife. The room began to spin, voices blurring into a cacophony of whispers and judgmental stares. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I wouldn't take this anymore. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring the startled exclamations behind me. I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking, and entered our bedroom. The suitcase was still there, waiting. As I reached for it, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, beaten down, hollow-eyed, a shadow of her former self. But in her eyes, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen in months: determination. I grabbed the suitcase and my car keys. It was time to reclaim my life, my identity. As I descended the stairs, I could hear Brenda's voice, still holding court in the living room. Joe appeared at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes widening as he took in my appearance. "Lily, what are you doing?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm leaving, Joe. I can't do this anymore." As I walked past him towards the door, I realized that this wasn't just about escaping Brenda's tyranny. It was about finding myself again, the strong, capable woman I used to be. And for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I stood at the front door, my hand on the knob, ready to walk out on everything I'd known for the past year. Joe's voice, tinged with panic, cut through my resolve. "Lily, please, don't do this. We can talk about it." I turned to face him, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to say, Joe. I can't live like this anymore." Just as I opened the door, a commotion from the living room caught our attention. A woman's voice, filled with excitement, rose above the murmur of the party. "It's her! It's really her!" Curiosity overrode my desire to flee. I followed Joe back to the party, where we found a silver-haired woman pointing at me, her eyes wide with recognition. "You're Dr. Hartley, aren't you? The one who saved my life at Rosie's Cafe last year." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. I recognized the woman now, Abigail Thompson, the patient I'd resuscitated during my lunch break months ago. Yes, that's me," I stammered, caught off guard by this unexpected turn of events. Abigail rushed forward, grasping my hands. "I've been trying to find you for months to thank you properly. You disappeared from the hospital before I could." Brenda, looking flustered, tried to interject. "Now, Abigail, dear, this is hardly the time." But Abigail was unstoppable. She turned to the crowd, her voice ringing with emotion. "This woman is a hero. She performed CPR on me when I had a heart attack, kept me alive until the ambulance arrived. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for her quick thinking and skill." The room erupted in applause and exclamations of admiration. I stood there, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in attention. Joe looked at me with a mixture of pride and confusion. Abigail continued, "But wait, I don't understand. Brenda told us you were just a housewife. Why aren't you practicing medicine anymore?" The room fell silent once again. I could feel Brenda's glare burning into me, daring me to speak the truth. In that moment, something inside me broke free. The months of suppressed anger, frustration, and pain came pouring out. "I gave up my career because of Brenda," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "She manipulated her way into our home, made me feel worthless, and slowly stripped away everything that made me who I am." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Joe's face paled as he looked between me and his mother. Brenda, her face contorted with rage, stepped forward. "How dare you? After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me, by humiliating me in front of my friends." Abigail, sensing the tension, placed a protective hand on my arm. "Brenda, what's going on here? What have you done to this poor girl?" As Brenda sputtered and tried to defend herself, more guests began to speak up. They shared stories of how Brenda had spoken ill of me behind my back, painting me as lazy and incompetent. Joe, looking shell-shocked, finally found his voice. "Mom, is this true? Have you been lying to us all this time?" Brenda's facade crumbled. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally and finding none. In a last-ditch effort, she turned to me, her voice dripping with venom. "You ungrateful little witch. I welcomed you into this family, and this is how you repay me? By turning everyone against me?" The room collectively recoiled at her outburst. Joe stepped between us, his face a mask of disbelief and disappointment. "That's enough, Mom. I think you should leave." As Brenda was escorted out, her protests fading into the night, I stood there, trembling. The truth was finally out, but at what cost? Abigail squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You're not alone, Dr. Hartley. We're all here for you." I looked around the room, seeing sympathy and support in the faces of Brenda's former friends. Joe approached me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Can we talk? Please." As the party disintegrated around us, I faced the biggest decision of my life. Could I forgive Joe for his blindness? Could we rebuild what Brenda had so systematically destroyed? Or was it too late to salvage the pieces of my shattered life? The aftermath of Brenda's party left our house in eerie silence. Joe and I sat at opposite ends of the couch, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. Abigail had insisted on staying, her presence a comforting buffer. "I think," Abigail began softly, "that we need to get the whole story out in the open. Joe, Lily's been through hell, and you need to hear it all." Joe nodded, his face ashen. "Please, Lily, I need to understand." Taking a deep breath, I started from the beginning. The words poured out of me like a flood. Brenda's manipulation, the constant criticism, the isolation. With each revelation, Joe's face crumpled further, disbelief giving way to horror. "I had no idea," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Cliff, Joe's father, stormed in, his face thunderous. "What in God's name is going on here?" he demanded. "Brenda called me in hysterics, saying you've turned the whole town against her." Abigail stood, her small frame radiating strength. "Cliff, sit down. There's a lot you need to hear." For the next hour, Abigail and I laid out the entire sordid tale. Cliff's anger slowly morphed into shock, then shame. I knew Brenda could be difficult, he mumbled, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined. Just as we finished, the door opened again. Brenda swept in, her eyes red-rimmed but defiant. "Well, I hope you're all happy," she spat. "My reputation is in tatters, thanks to you ungrateful." "That's enough, Brenda," Cliff cut her off, his voice steely. "I've heard everything. How could you do this to our family? To Lily?" Brenda's face contorted with rage. "How could I? How could she? She stole my son, turned him against me. I was just trying to protect our family." "By destroying mine," I shot back, years of pent-up anger finally breaking free. "You made my life a living hell, Brenda. You took everything from me, my career, my confidence, nearly my marriage." Joe stood, placing himself between Brenda and me. "Mom, I think you should leave. Now." Brenda's eyes widened in disbelief. "Joey, you can't mean that. After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done?" Joe's voice rose. "You've lied, manipulated, and abused the woman I love. Get out of our house. Now." For a moment, Brenda looked like she might argue further. Then, with a final venomous glare at me, she turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Cliff cleared his throat, looking years older than he had an hour ago. "Lily, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. If there's anything I can do." I held up a hand, suddenly exhausted. "Thank you, Cliff, but right now, I think I need some time." As Cliff and Abigail prepared to leave, Joe turned to me, his eyes pleading. "Lily, please, can we talk?" I looked at him. This man I'd loved enough to sacrifice everything for. Could I forgive him for being so blind? Could we rebuild what Brenda had so systematically destroyed? "I don't know, Joe," I said honestly. "I need time to think, to figure out who I am without Brenda's shadow looming over me." Joe nodded, tears in his eyes. "I understand. But please, don't give up on us. I love you, Lily. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. The truth was finally out, Brenda's reign of terror over. But the cost had been high. Could I reclaim the pieces of my shattered life? And more importantly, did I want to? I turned to Abigail, who had become an unexpected ally in this storm. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She squeezed my hand reassuringly. "You heal, Dr. Hartley, and then you decide what kind of life you want to build from the ashes of the old one." As I stood there on the precipice of an uncertain future, I realized that for the first time in months I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. 6 months after Brenda's dramatic exit from our lives, I stood outside the hospital, my heart racing. Today marked my return to the ER, a day I'd both longed for and feared. "You've got this, Dr. Hartley," Abigail's voice came from beside me. Our unexpected friendship had become my anchor during the tumultuous months of healing and self-discovery. I took a deep breath and stepped through the doors, the familiar antiseptic smell washing over me. As I made my way to the locker room, I caught sight of my reflection. The woman staring back at me was different from the one who'd left this hospital over a year ago. Stronger, wiser, with a glint of hard-won confidence in her eyes. My first shift was a whirlwind of activity. As I treated patients, my hands moving with practiced skill, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was where I belonged. During a rare quiet moment, I stepped out for some air. To my surprise, Joe was waiting by the entrance, a bouquet of flowers in his hand. "I wanted to be here for your first day back," he said, his voice tinged with hope and uncertainty. Over the past months, we'd been slowly rebuilding our relationship, attending couples therapy, and having long, honest conversations. It hadn't been easy, but we were both committed to making it work. "Thank you," I said, accepting the flowers. "It means a lot that you're here." Just then my pager went off. "I have to go," I said apologetically. Joe nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Go save lives, Dr. Hartley. I'll be here when you're done." As I rushed back inside, I felt a surge of gratitude for how far we'd come. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of emergencies and quick decisions. As I was preparing to leave, a commotion at the entrance caught my attention. My blood ran cold as I recognized the voice. Brenda. She was being wheeled in on a gurney, clearly in distress. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. In that instant, I had a choice to make. I could walk away, let someone else handle her case. After all she'd put me through, no one would blame me. But as I looked at her, vulnerable and afraid, I remembered why I became a doctor in the first place. To help people, regardless of who they were or what they'd done. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. "I'll take this one," I said to the surprised nurse. As I began examining Brenda, her eyes widened with recognition and, was that shame? "Lily," she whispered, "I don't deserve your help." I met her gaze steadily. "You're my patient, Brenda. That's all that matters right now." Over the next few hours, I worked tirelessly to stabilize Brenda's condition. It turned out to be a severe panic attack, brought on by the stress of her isolation and the weight of her actions. As she recovered, Brenda looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Lily, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I regret what I did to you." I nodded, feeling a weight I didn't know I was carrying lift from my shoulders. "Thank you for saying that, Brenda. It means a lot." As I left her room, I found Joe waiting outside. He pulled me into a tight embrace. "I saw what you did in there," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're incredible, Lily. I'm so proud of you." In that moment, surrounded by the bustle of the hospital, held in the arms of the man I loved, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been long and painful, but it had led me here, back to myself, stronger and more resilient than ever. As we walked out of the hospital hand in hand, I realized that this wasn't just an ending, but a new beginning. I had reclaimed my career, my self-respect, and my voice, and I vowed never to let anyone silence me again. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, of course, but I was ready to face them head-on, because now I knew my own strength, and I had a support system that wouldn't let me fall. As the sun set on my first day back, I smiled, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. The road ahead might be uncertain, but one thing was clear. Dr. Lily Hartley was back, and she was here to stay. The screen of George's phone illuminated the darkness, casting an eerie glow across our bedroom. I hadn't meant to snoop, but the constant buzzing at 2 a.m. had roused me from sleep. Now, with trembling fingers, I scrolled through a conversation that threatened to shatter my world. "I miss you already," the message read. "Last night was incredible." My stomach lurched. This couldn't be happening. Not to us. Not after 30 years of marriage. I set the phone down, my mind reeling. How long had this been going on? Who was she? The questions swirled, each one more painful than the last. "Anna," George's groggy voice startled me. "What are you doing up?" I turned to face him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who's Sarah?" The silence that followed was deafening. George's face, illuminated by the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window, contorted into a mix of shock and guilt. "It's not what you think," he stammered, sitting up in bed. "Really?" I spat, my sadness quickly giving way to anger. "Because I think it's exactly what I think." "How long, George?" He ran a hand through his thinning hair, avoiding my gaze. "Anna, please, can we talk about this in the morning?" "No," I said firmly, standing up. "We're talking about this now. How long have you been cheating on me?" George sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. 6 months. The words hit me like a physical blow. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of betrayal. "Does she know about me? About the girls?" I asked, thinking of our 2 daughters sleeping down the hall. George nodded slowly. "She knows I'm married, yes." I laughed bitterly. "Well, isn't that just wonderful? At least you had the decency to tell your mistress about your family." "Anna, I'm sorry," George began, but I cut him off. "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear your excuses right now." I grabbed my robe and headed for the door, needing to put some distance between us before I said something I couldn't take back. "Where are you going?" George called after me. "To sleep in the guest room," I replied without turning around. "I can't even look at you right now." As I made my way down the hall, I paused at our daughters' rooms. Lily, 25, and Rose, 22, were both home for the summer. How was I going to tell them their father had betrayed us all? I slipped into the guest room, closing the door behind me. As I sank onto the bed, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. How had we gotten here? Where had I gone wrong? My phone buzzed on the nightstand, startling me. It was a text from my sister-in-law, Lucy. "You up? I need to talk to you." I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Can't sleep? What's wrong?" The response came quickly. "I think Tom's cheating on me. Can we meet tomorrow?" My heart sank. Was this some sort of twisted family curse? Of course, I typed back. Coffee at 10, the usual place. Perfect. Thank you, Anna. I set the phone down, my mind racing. First George, now possibly Tom. What was happening to our family? As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I made a decision. I wouldn't let George's betrayal define me. I wouldn't let it destroy our family, but I also wouldn't let him get away with it. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Lucy. We'd compare notes, make a plan. And then, we'd show George and Tom exactly what happens when you mess with the women in this family. I closed my eyes, finally drifting off to sleep. In my dreams, I saw myself standing tall, surrounded by my daughters and sister-in-laws. We were strong, we were united, and we were ready for a fight. The next morning, I found myself at our usual coffee shop waiting for Lucy. My eyes were puffy from a sleepless night, and my hands shook as I clutched my latte. When Lucy walked in, I could see the same weariness etched on her face. "Anna," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thank you for meeting me. I didn't know who else to turn to." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We're family, Lucy. We stick together." Lucy's eyes welled up with tears. "I found receipts," she whispered. "Expensive dinners, hotel rooms. Tom's been lying to me for months." My heart sank. It was like looking in a mirror, seeing my own pain reflected in Lucy's eyes. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I know exactly how you feel, George. He's been cheating on me, too." Lucy's eyes widened in shock. "George, but I thought—" "Oh, Anna, what are we going to do?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my daughter, Rose. "Mom, can you come home? Grandma Eleanor's here and she's being awful." I groaned. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, was the last person I wanted to deal with right now. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I have to go. Family emergency." Lucy nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Go. We'll talk later." I rushed home, my mind racing. What could Eleanor want? As I pulled into the driveway, I saw her sleek Mercedes parked out front. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and walked inside. The scene that greeted me made my blood boil. Eleanor was in the living room, fawning over a framed photo of her grandson, Tom and Lucy's boy, while completely ignoring the beautiful portraits of my girls on the mantel. "Anna, there you are," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I was just telling the girls how wonderful it would be if they could be more like their cousin. He's studying law at Harvard, you know?" I saw Rose and Lily exchange a look of hurt and anger. Lily, always the more outspoken of the two, stepped forward. "Grandma, I just got accepted into medical school. Isn't that worth celebrating, too?" Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, that's nice, dear, but it's not quite the same as law school, is it?" I'd had enough. "Eleanor," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger, "my daughters are brilliant, accomplished young women. They don't need to be compared to anyone." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you'd raised them properly, maybe they'd have achieved more by now. It's a shame George didn't have any sons. The family name will die out with him." The room fell silent. I could see the shock and hurt on my daughters' faces. Something inside me snapped. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my house right now." Eleanor looked stunned. "I beg your pardon?" "You heard me," I said, stepping closer. "I will not stand here and let you belittle my children. Your grandson isn't better than them just because he's a boy. Now leave before I say something I might regret." Eleanor huffed, gathering her designer purse. "Well, I never. George will hear about this, mark my words." As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I turned to my daughters. They both looked shell-shocked. "Mom," Rose said quietly, "what's going on? You've never stood up to Grandma like that before." I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Girls, there's something I need to tell you. It's about your father." As I began to explain, I saw the hurt and betrayal bloom in their eyes. But beneath it, I saw something else too, a fierce determination that mirrored my own. In that moment, I knew, whatever came next, we'd face it together. The men in our lives might have let us down, but we had each other, and that was more than enough. The day after Eleanor's visit, I called an emergency meeting with Lucy and Margaret. We met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes and wagging tongues. "I can't believe this is happening to all of us," Margaret said, stirring her tea absently. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and I knew she'd been crying. "What do you mean, all of us?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Margaret took a shaky breath. "I found out last week. He's been seeing his secretary for months. Lucy and I exchanged a glance. 3 brothers, 3 affairs. It couldn't be a coincidence. We need to do something, Lucy said, her voice low and determined. We can't let them get away with this. I nodded, feeling a surge of anger. You're right, but what? We spent the next hour brainstorming, our voices growing more animated as we shared ideas. By the time we left the cafe, we had the beginnings of a plan. Are you sure about this, Anna? Lucy asked as we stood in the parking lot. Once we start, there's no going back. I thought about George's betrayal, about Eleanor's disdain for my daughters, about the years I'd spent trying to be the perfect wife and mother. I'm sure, I said firmly. It's time we stood up for ourselves. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. We gathered evidence, consulted lawyers, and prepared for the confrontation to come. Through it all, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. A week after our meeting, I was in the kitchen making dinner when George came home. He kissed me on the cheek, acting as if nothing had changed between us. How was your day, dear? He asked, reaching for a beer in the fridge. I turned to face him, my heart pounding. It was enlightening, I said carefully. I had lunch with Lucy and Margaret. George froze, his hand on the fridge door. Oh, he said, trying to sound casual. How are they? Not good, I said, watching his face closely. It seems your brothers have been keeping secrets, too. The color drained from George's face. Anna, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, George, I snapped, my patience finally snapping. I know about Sarah, I know about the affair, and I know about your brother's affairs, too. George stumbled back, shock written all over his face. How did you find out? It doesn't matter, I said, my voice cold. What matters is what happens next. Just then, the doorbell rang. George looked at me, confusion and fear in his eyes. Who's that? I smiled, a small, satisfied smile. That would be Lucy and Margaret, and they're lawyers. George's eyes widened in panic. Lawyers? Anna, what have you done? What I should have done a long time ago, I said, walking past him to answer the door. I'm taking back control of my life. As I opened the door, I saw Lucy and Margaret standing there, determination etched on their faces. Behind them stood 3 stern-looking men in suits, our lawyers. Are you ready? Lucy asked, her voice steady. I nodded, feeling a surge of strength. More than ready. As we walked back into the kitchen, George's face paled even further. I could see the realization dawning in his eyes. This was no longer just about his affair. This was about years of disrespect, of taking us for granted, of treating us like second-class citizens in our own families. George, I said, my voice ringing with newfound confidence, we need to talk. All of us. The look of fear on his face was almost satisfying. Almost. But I knew the real satisfaction would come when we finally got the justice and respect we deserved. As we all sat down at the kitchen table, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was it. The moment everything would change. And I was ready for it. The tension in our kitchen was palpable as George sat across from me, flanked by our lawyers. Lucy and Margaret had left with their own legal counsel, ready to confront their husbands. Now, it was just George and me, the remnants of our 30-year marriage crumbling between us. Anna, George began, his voice strained, can't we discuss this privately? We don't need lawyers involved. I fixed him with a steely gaze. We're well past that point, George. You made sure of that when you decided to sleep with Sarah. His face flushed with anger. It was a mistake, okay? I'm sorry, but do you really want to throw away our entire marriage over one indiscretion? One? I laughed bitterly. Don't insult my intelligence. I know it's been going on for months. George's lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Thompson, I advise you not to say anything further without consulting me. I turned to my own lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia. Show him what we found. Patricia pulled out a thick folder and slid it across the table. George's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. Bank statements, hotel receipts, text message logs. The evidence of his betrayal laid bare. How did you get all this? He whispered, his face ashen. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. What matters is that it's over, George. I want a divorce. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with finality. George slumped in his chair, defeated. Fine, he muttered, if that's what you want, but don't expect to take me for everything I'm worth. I built this life. I earned this money. I felt a surge of rage at his words. You built this life? I gave up my career to raise our daughters while you climbed the corporate ladder. I managed this household, supported your ambitions, put up with your mother's constant criticism. Don't you dare tell me I haven't earned my share. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. Mom, Grandma Eleanor is here. She's saying awful things about you and Dad. What's going on? My heart sank. Of course, Eleanor would get involved. I turned back to George, my resolve strengthening. Your mother is at our house right now, no doubt poisoning our daughters against me, I said, my voice cold. Is that part of your plan too? George looked genuinely surprised. I didn't tell her anything, Anna. I swear. It doesn't matter, I said, standing up. I need to go home and deal with this. As I gathered my things, George reached out and grabbed my arm. Anna, please, can't we work this out, for the girls' sake? I jerked my arm away, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. You should have thought about the girls before you started cheating, George. It's too late now. I left him sitting there, looking lost and broken. Part of me ached to comfort him, to fall back into the familiar patterns of our marriage. But I squashed that impulse. I had to be strong for myself and for my daughters. As I drove home, my mind raced. How much had Eleanor told the girls? How would I explain everything to them? And what would our future look like now, with the family torn apart? I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Through the living room window, I could see Eleanor gesticulating wildly, her face twisted with anger. Lily and Rose sat on the couch, looking shell-shocked. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out of the car. It was time to face the music, to stand up not just to George, but to Eleanor and all the years of subtle put-downs and gender bias she represented. As I reached for the doorknob, I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Whatever happened next would change our lives forever. But for the first time in years, I felt truly in control of my destiny. I opened the door, ready to fight for my daughters, my dignity, and our future. Thanksgiving Day arrived with a chill in the air that matched the icy tension in our home. As I prepared the turkey, my hands trembled slightly. Today was the day. The day I would shatter the facade of our perfect family. Lucy and Margaret arrived early, their faces a mix of determination and fear. We huddled in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. Are you sure about this, Anna? Lucy whispered, her eyes darting nervously towards the living room, where our husbands sat, oblivious to the storm about to break. I nodded, my jaw set. It's now or never. We can't live like this anymore. The doorbell rang, announcing Eleanor's arrival. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. As we gathered around the dining table, the air was thick with unspoken words. George sat at the head, carving the turkey with practiced ease, as if our world wasn't about to implode. Well, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Isn't this lovely? All of us together, although it would be nicer if we had some grandsons at the table. I saw Lily and Rose exchange a pained look. That was the final straw. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. All eyes turned to me. Anna? George asked, confusion etched on his face. What are you doing? Something I should have done a long time ago, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm telling the truth. Eleanor scoffed. What on earth are you talking about? I turned to face her, years of pent-up frustration bubbling to the surface. I'm talking about the way you've always favored boys over girls, the way you've made my daughters feel less than, and I'm talking about your son's infidelity. A collective gasp went around the table. George's face paled. George has been having an affair, I continued, my voice growing stronger, and he's not the only one. Tom and David have been unfaithful, too. Lucy and Margaret stood up, flanking me in a show of solidarity. It's true, Lucy said, her voice shaking slightly. We've all been betrayed. The room erupted into chaos. Eleanor was shouting, George was stammering excuses, and our children looked shell-shocked. Enough, I yelled, silencing the room. I've made my decision. I'm filing for divorce. George jumped to his feet. Anna, please, we can work this out. No, we can't, I cut him off. You've made your choices, George. Now I'm making mine. Eleanor turned on me, her face contorted with rage. You ungrateful woman, after everything this family has done for you. Done for me? I laughed bitterly. You mean belittled me, made me feel worthless, treated my daughters like second-class citizens? I turned to Lily and Rose, who were watching with wide eyes. Girls, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But I want you to know that you are valued, you are loved, and you are more than enough, just as you are. Tears welled up in their eyes as they nodded, understanding dawning on their faces. This is ridiculous, Eleanor sputtered. George, are you going to let her speak to me this way? But George remained silent, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. This facade of a perfect family ends now. We're done pretending. As I looked around the table at the shocked faces of our family, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years I felt truly free. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, I said, my voice laced with irony. I think it's time we all went home. As the family began to disperse, murmuring in shocked whispers, I caught Lucy and Margaret's eyes. They nodded, a silent agreement passing between us. We had taken the first step. There was no going back now. I watched as George slumped in his chair, head in his hands. Part of me ached for the man I had loved for so long, but a stronger part knew this was necessary. For me, for my daughters, and for all the women who had been silenced for too long. The facade had shattered. Now it was time to rebuild. The aftermath of our Thanksgiving revelation was like the eye of a hurricane, a deceptive calm before the real storm hit. I spent the next few days in a daze, fielding calls from shocked relatives and comforting my daughters. But I knew the worst was yet to come. A week after Thanksgiving, Lucy, Margaret, and I met at our lawyer's office. As we sat around the polished oak table, the gravity of our situation settled over us like a heavy blanket. Ladies, our lawyer Patricia began, I've reviewed your cases. I won't sugarcoat it. This won't be easy. Your husbands are powerful men with considerable resources. I felt a flicker of doubt, but quickly squashed it. We're prepared for a fight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Lucy nodded, her face set with determination. We've been silent for too long. It's time to stand up for ourselves. Just then, Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her brow furrowing. It seems your husbands have made a preemptive move. They're calling a family meeting at Eleanor's house. Tonight. My stomach dropped. Eleanor's house, the lion's den. I exchanged worried glances with Lucy and Margaret. We don't have to go, Margaret said, her voice trembling slightly, but I knew we did. No, we need to face this head on. We can't let them control the narrative. As we pulled up to Eleanor's sprawling mansion that evening, I felt a mix of dread and determination. The three of us walked in together, a united front against whatever awaited us inside. The scene that greeted us was like something out of a twisted family drama. George, Tom, and David sat on one side of the room, their faces a mix of anger and desperation. Eleanor presided over the gathering from her ornate armchair, looking like a queen about to pass judgment. Well, well, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with disdain. The prodigal daughters-in-law return. I stepped forward, refusing to be intimidated. We're here to talk, Eleanor. That's all. George stood up, his face pleading. Anna, please. Can't we discuss this privately? We can work things out. Before I could respond, Lucy's voice rang out, clear and strong. There's nothing to discuss, Tom. I've already filed for divorce. The room erupted into chaos. David lunged at Margaret, grabbing her arm. You can't do this to me, he shouted. I watched in horror as Margaret stumbled, fear flashing across her face. Something inside me snapped. Enough, I roared, my voice cutting through the din. This ends now. We're not your property. We're not here to be controlled or manipulated. Eleanor rose from her chair, her face twisted with rage. You ungrateful women, after everything this family has given you. Given us? I laughed bitterly. You mean the constant criticism? The belittling of our daughters? The blind eye to your son's infidelities? I turned to face George, Tom, and David. We trusted you. We loved you. And you betrayed us in the worst possible way. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Then, to my shock, a slow clap started from the doorway. We all turned to see Lily and Rose standing there, pride shining in their eyes. Well said, Mom, Lily said, her voice strong. It's about time someone stood up to this toxic family dynamic. Eleanor sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red. How dare you? But Rose cut her off. No, Grandma. How dare you? How dare all of you treat our mothers this way? As I looked at my daughters, standing tall and unafraid, I felt a surge of pride and strength. This was why we were fighting. This was what it was all about. I turned back to face the room, my resolve stronger than ever. We're done being silent. We're done playing by your rules. From now on, we make our own path. The tension in the room was palpable, like a rubber band stretched to its breaking point. I knew that whatever happened next would change our lives forever, but as I stood there, flanked by my daughters and sister-in-laws, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. We were stronger together, and we were ready for whatever storm was about to break. The morning after our confrontation at Eleanor's house, I woke to a flurry of missed calls and text messages. My phone buzzed incessantly as I scrolled through them, my heart racing with each notification. Anna, we need to talk. Please. George. You'll regret this, all of you. Eleanor. Mom, are you okay? Call us. Lily. But the message that made my blood run cold came from our lawyer, Patricia. Emergency meeting, 9 a.m. Your husbands are trying to freeze your assets. I sprang into action, calling Lucy and Margaret as I threw on clothes. Within an hour, we were huddled in Patricia's office, the gravity of our situation weighing heavily on us. They're playing dirty, Patricia said, her voice grim. They filed for emergency orders to restrict your access to joint accounts, properties, everything. Lucy gasped, her face pale. Can they do that? Patricia nodded. They're claiming your flight risks, that you might try to hide or spend the money before the divorce proceedings. I felt a surge of anger. That's ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong. I know, Patricia said, but we need to act fast. We have a hearing this afternoon. The judge will decide whether to grant their request. As we left Patricia's office, my phone buzzed again. It was George. Against my better judgment, I answered. Anna, please. His voice was desperate. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. I felt a flicker of doubt, remembering the good times we'd shared. But then I thought of his betrayal, of Eleanor's constant belittling, of the years I'd spent feeling less than. It's too late, George, I said, my voice steady. You've made your choices. Now I'm making mine. The courthouse was a flurry of activity as we arrived. Our husbands were there, looking smug in their expensive suits. Eleanor sat behind them, her face a mask of disdain. As the hearing began, I felt a knot of fear in my stomach. What if the judge sided with them? What if we lost everything we'd worked for? But as our lawyer presented our case, I felt a surge of pride. We weren't the villains here. We were women standing up for ourselves, for our children, for our futures. The judge listened intently, his face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his words sent a shockwave through the courtroom. I'm denying the request for asset freezing, he said. There's no evidence of any intention to hide or misuse funds. Furthermore, he continued, fixing our husbands with a stern gaze, I'm ordering a full financial audit of all parties involved. I watched as the color drained from George's face. From the corner of my eye, I saw Tom and David exchange panicked looks. As we left the courtroom, I felt a mix of relief and trepidation. We'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Eleanor cornered us in the hallway, her face twisted with fury. You think you've won? She hissed. This isn't over. You'll never get away with this. I stood tall, meeting her gaze. No, Eleanor, you're right. It's not over, but we're not backing down. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rose. Mom, there are reporters outside our house. They're asking about Dad's company. What's going on? My heart sank. I looked at Lucy and Margaret, seeing my own fear reflected in their eyes. What had we stumbled into? As we hurried out of the courthouse, dodging reporters and flashing cameras, I realized we were standing on the precipice of something much bigger than we'd anticipated. Our fight for justice had uncovered a web of deceit that went far beyond our marriages. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. We'd started this fight for ourselves, for our daughters. Now, it seemed, we were fighting for something much larger. As we climbed into the car, I turned to Lucy and Margaret. Are you ready for this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They nodded, determination etched on their faces. Whatever storm was coming, we'd face it together. The tables had turned, and there was no going back now. 1 year after that fateful Thanksgiving, I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge prepared to deliver the final verdict in our divorce proceedings. Lucy and Margaret flanked me, our hands clasped tightly together. Across the aisle, George, Tom, and David sat with their lawyers, their faces a mix of anger and defeat. As the judge began to speak, I felt a wave of emotions wash over me. This wasn't just about the end of our marriages. It was about reclaiming our lives, our dignity, and our futures. In light of the evidence presented, the judge said, her voice clear and firm, this court finds in favor of the plaintiffs. The divorce settlements will proceed as outlined, including equal division of assets and full custody of the children to the mothers. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. I turned to Lucy and Margaret, tears of relief and joy streaming down our faces. We'd done it. We'd won. But the judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, in light of the financial irregularities uncovered during these proceedings, I'm recommending a full investigation into the business practices of Thompson Industries. I watched as the color drained from George's face. The web of deceit we'd uncovered went far beyond our marriages. It had exposed years of corporate fraud and mismanagement. As we left the courthouse, a crowd of reporters surged forward. But it was Lily and Rose who pushed through first, enveloping me in a tight hug. We're so proud of you, Mom, Lily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Rose nodded, her eyes shining. You showed us what real strength looks like. Over their shoulders, I caught sight of Eleanor, standing alone at the edge of the crowd. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to see anger or hatred, but instead I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes: respect. In the months that followed, our lives transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Lucy, Margaret, and I bought a sprawling house together, creating a new kind of family filled with laughter, love, and unwavering support. Our children thrived in this new environment. Lily pursued her medical career with renewed vigor, inspired by the strength she'd seen in us. Rose started a support group for children of divorce, turning our family's pain into a force for good. Even Eleanor surprised us. One day, she showed up at our door, her usual haughty demeanor replaced by a hesitant vulnerability. I was wrong, she said simply. About everything. I'd like to be a part of your lives if you'll have me. It wasn't easy, but slowly, we began to rebuild those bridges. Eleanor became a regular fixture at our family dinners, her previous disdain for her granddaughters replaced by genuine interest and affection. As for George and his brothers, they faced the consequences of their actions. The investigation into Thompson Industries revealed years of financial misdeeds. The company crumbled, taking their fortunes and reputations with it. One evening, as we all sat around our large dining table, Lucy, Margaret, our children, and even Eleanor, I looked around and felt a surge of gratitude. We'd been through hell, but we'd come out stronger on the other side. You know, Lucy said, raising her glass, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for what we went through. Look at what we've built. Margaret nodded, her eyes misty. We're more than just survivors. We're thrivers. As we clinked our glasses together, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We'd redefined what family meant. We'd shown our children the power of resilience, the strength of women standing together. Our story wasn't just about revenge or justice. It was about transformation, about rising from the ashes of betrayal and building something beautiful and strong. As I looked at the faces of these women, my sisters in all but blood, and our children, I knew that whatever challenges life might throw our way, we'd face them together. We were unbreakable, and in that moment, I realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning. The start of a new chapter, filled with hope, love, and the unbreakable bonds of our chosen family.